Minato is a weak, ugly loser with zero aura, whose life suddenly changed when 5 overpowered baddies started trying to clap him. This story starts in Taito, Japan's capital city. While the other college prospects celebrated getting accepted, 19-year-old Minato had managed to fail the college entrance exams again. After breaking the news to his mom and nearly getting disowned, he saw a news broadcast about the MBI company's CEO's plan to buy out the capital city before getting on a train. After staring at the MBI building for most of the train ride, he got off at his station. He was heading home when he suddenly heard someone yelling and looked up right before a chick crashed into him. When he opened his eyes, her massive dump truck was inches away from his face. After getting off him, she thanked him for breaking her fall, and he immediately tried to reach for her milkers.
Sussy baka.
Just then, she shoved him away from a blast and nearly broke his nose with her melons. Her attackers were twins who were itching for a fight that she kept refusing to give them. Before they could hit them with another blast, she grabbed Minato and ran, pulling him along like an inflatable. The next morning, Minato's hand fell into 2 massive milkers, and he woke up terrified, seeing the same girl asleep beside him. After waking up, she thanked him for the clothes while returning them, popping out her gravity-defying melons that ruptured an artery in his head. When she tried getting close with her plot uncovered, he ran out the door and tried to wrap his head around what was happened. After escaping the Thunder Twins the previous day, she saw that he had passed out and apologized to him when he regained consciousness. As Musubi introduced herself and thanked him for helping her, he struggled to speak properly with her melons inches away from his face. Suddenly, she passed out and ended up back at his place, where she stuffed her face with burgers and thanked him again. Minato was thinking about the Thunder Twins when Musubi told him that she was homeless and asked if she could stay with him. He accepted and was trying to ask her about the twins when she asked him to be her ashikabi. Before he could even ask her what she meant, she grabbed his hand and placed it right on the tip of her melon. Moments later, he was outside thinking again when his landlord showed up to ask if he had company. After yelling in his face about the no couples rule, he left and Musubi came out to apologize for her lack of self-respect. After subtly telling her to keep doing what she did exclusively for him, she got hungry again, so they went to eat at a restaurant. With this monthly allowance spent on her feast, he told her he was heading to the bank, and she went to get groceries for dinner. On the way to the bank, he ran into the Thunder Twins, and they immediately started asking him about Musubi, who was causing a minor earthquake, as she ran with her mega melons to ask him about his choice for dinner. Once they saw her, they immediately merged powers and hit her with a lightning blast that nearly seared off her melons. After saying something about Musubi not yet getting her wings yet, they charged up for a second blast, but Minato shoved her out of the way just in time. As he got off her and turned to stop the Thunder Twins, Musubi's love sensors started tingling from the effects of his aura and couldn't hear him telling her to escape. He then picked her up and ran, dodging the blast from the twins who chased after them until he ran into an alley. He was trying to catch his breath when she lost control and pushed him up against the wall, begging him to clap her right there. After she pushed him down and pressed his hand into her melons again, he was about to give her what she wanted, but then the twins cornered them to make sure they couldn't escape. Not caring about her life, Musubi started getting closer. Hikari and Hibiki ran to stop her, but they didn't make it in time. The moment she exchanged mouth juices with him, wings of light exploded out of her back. Hikari then pulled Minato back and was about to sear his face off when Musubi told her to stop. As she charged straight for her, Hikari tossed Minato aside before blocking her punches and leaving with her sister, claiming they didn't fight Wayne girls. They had just gotten to an alleyway when they saw Homura, who called them spineless bitches for trying to jump a Sakuragi before she could get her wings. They had started challenging him when he asked if they literally wanted to get smoked, and they got scared. Luckily, Musubi had already gotten her wings, so he decided to spare them. Later that day, Minato called his sister to ask for some clothes so Musubi could stop wearing the only shirt he had. After the call, he was staring at her rice cakes as she cooked while thinking about what happened with the twins, when the TV suddenly came on. He was about to turn it off when the guy inside told him to listen. Musubi said she knew the professor, and a closer look reminded Minato of the news broadcast from the previous day. The CEO professor then told Minato that he had been chosen to become a Sakurai's partner. After explaining that he was now part of a game where Sakurais like Musubi fought each other with help from partners like him, the professor told him to keep the game a secret and threatened to unalive him if he snitched before leaving. Moments later, Minato got a box from an MBI goon and thought they were about to clap him. After getting new clothes for Musubi from the box, he was about to leave to give her space when she called him back to promise her loyalty. Their moment got interrupted by his landlord, who had just confirmed his suspicion and decided to make them homeless. Early the next day, they were talking to a new landlord hoping to get a new place, but he rejected them. After Musubi gave him a pep talk, he got motivated to keep searching for a new place, and by nightfall, they were at a park bench after getting rejected by over 30 landlords. As it started raining, Minato told Musubi to reconsider choosing him to be her partner, as he was a brokey with incredibly low testosterone that made him unfit for random battles. She responded by telling him she wasn't wasn't a gold digger before shutting him up with a kiss that activated her wings. Using her powers, she said a Sakurai prayer before grabbing him and creating a tornado she used to take him above the clouds. Somewhere in a forest that night, a little girl was trapped crying for help. After spending a couple of seconds suspended in the upper atmosphere, gravity did its thing and sent the lovebirds falling to their end. After Minato saw a ghost flying towards them, they both crashed into a tree and fell to the ground. As Minato opened his eyes to Musubi's dirty plot, a lady from the compound they crashed into came out and asked who they were. Moments later, Minato got cleaned up with help from Kagari, and when he asked about what happened, he remembered the professor's threat and blamed it on bad weather. Just then, Musubi came out wearing a kimono she got from Muya. After thanking her, they mistook Kagari to be the man of the house, but Mia's husband had passed on a while ago. Forgetting that they were freeloading brokies, Musubi asked for what Mia was cooking, and she was luckily kind enough to fix them a plate. While they ate what would be their first meal of the day, a chick with melons that were beyond the effects of gravity showed up to join them. Minato asked Mia if they were all related, and she told him that they were actually her tenants. After Yuzume said the boarding house was slowly looking like a crack house and almost got evicted by Mia, Minato begged her for a room. When she easily agreed to let them get a room, Kagari asked Mia if she had actually started taking crack. Mia said she was trying to live up to her husband's kindness and actually liked the lovebirds, so she decided to let them stay. Kagari ended up skipping dinner after getting an important work call. Back at his place later on, Musubi was in the shower while Minato watched the news about an abnormal forest growth in the MBI's botanical garden. After turning off the TV, he called his mom to tell her about the move and begged for some money. After she called him useless and hung up the phone, Minato's brain fried when he saw Musubi's entire plot as she came out to ask for some shampoo. She then tripped and fell on him, suffocating him with her melons before apologizing for coming on too strong. In the park that night, a homeless hottie was trying to nap on a bench when an ashikabi showed up and told her to become his clap toy. The next day, Yukari pulled up to Minato's place with the clothes he asked for. When he asked her why she didn't just send it, she told him she had been accepted into a local college and wanted to check it out. She didn't tell him over the phone, so he wouldn't unalive himself due to being a repeat failure. After Musubi came to meet her and almost exposed their secret, she went to try out the clothes Yukari brought and joined them to clean, looking like one of Johnny Sins' co-workers. After, Yukari felt up Musubi's melons and told Minato she was proud of him before leaving. Musubi then easily lifted everything they had packed up and explained that being a fist type gave her superhuman strength as they walked to the boarding house. When they got to the boarding house, Mia welcomed them and showed them to their rooms, where Minato nearly blew out his lungs helping Musubi pull in their stuff. After Mia left, Minato reminded her to keep her Sakurai life a secret to avoid getting clipped by the professor. When she promised to keep him safe, he had to remind himself that he was the man in the relationship. While they were settling into the room, an introverted creep was watching their every move from her surveillance room. As the lovebirds came down for dinner, Kagari was leaving after deciding to skip, and Mia told them he had a busy life as a clap club host. Minato then asked Musubi if she knew what it was, and she told him she could show him a couple of tricks she had seen on the hub. The images of her plot in different angles nearly blew his culture mind up, and while he tried to stop his leaking nose, Mia told Musubi to get a shower so she wouldn't stink up the place with her fish pie. After taking a look at the bath with Minato, she tried to get him to share it with her, but he out and went to sit on the porch. After she got into the bath, Yuzume showed up with her mega melons and joined her. While sitting out, Minato remembered the weird fall from the other night and went to check out the tree. When he touched it, he saw the little girl from that night asking him for help. In the bathroom, Yuzume rinsed off her back, and Musubi saw that she was also a Sakurai. The next moment, Musubi started attacking her, and she managed to dodge her wall-smashing punches before running out of the bath while Musubi chased after her. Minato was trying to understand what he just saw when Yuzume jumped out the window and flashed him as she landed on the fence. After asking if he was Musubi's ashikabi, jumped over to him and asked him to control his bitch. Musubi jumped out after her and told Yuzume to keep her melons away from Minato. She was about to land another punch when Mia stopped it and smacked her with a spoon. She then explained that there was a no-violence policy with a scary aura that left them terrified as she went back inside. Outside a construction site that evening, a worker got a text about a new Sakurai in the city. That night, a blonde chick was looking at the forest in the botanical garden when Homura showed up. She challenged him to a duel, but he used a smoke bomb to escape while telling her to get a man. Later that night, Minato had a dream where he walked through a forest and found the tree girl on a branch. After breaking her fall with his body, Ku started crying while blaming herself for something and begged him to help her as she got sucked back into the forest. After waking up sweating, he saw Musubi's melons hovering over his face and told her about it. Asleep in the forest that night, Ku dreamt of the day she was playing outside until Takami told her it was time to head back to the lab. On way back, she was telling her about finding her ashikabi when a Sakurai showed up and cut out Takami's eye. Her ashikabi then tried to take Q, and she almost tore off his face. She got scared and ended up creating the forest she was now trapped in. The next morning, Minato woke up and started thinking about the dream from last night. Musubi was also up, and as she was packing up the futon, he was enjoying the view when they heard slashing and went to the balcony to see Mia slicing up leaves with her sword. Amazed by Maya's skill, Musubi jumped off the balcony, and after her melons defied the laws of nature when she landed, she asked Mia for a sparring match. Minato ran down and made it just in time to see Mia dodge Musubi's first punch. Yuzum also came out to see, and when he tried to get her to stop them, she told him to shut up and watch. While Mia schooled Musubi, Yuzum used the opportunity to tell Minato that she was down to clap if he felt like it. He was shocked by how she easily tried to get his glizzy, and suddenly realized that he was running late for work. After hours of manual labor at the construction site later on, he sat at a bench and unwrapped the bento box Mia gave him before he left. The moment he saw the Michelin star meal she had made for him, he couldn't hold back the tears, and a coworker started drooling beside him. After letting him have a rice ball, they got acquainted and talked about their shared lack of economic use. Just then, the Thunder Twins showed up, and Akari ran up to spread her fish lips before dropping Chio with a nasty kick to the face. While apologizing to Minato for Chio's lack of dignity, they recognized each other, and Minato dropped his food box in surprise. She was giving him some bread to make up for it when Chio grabbed both of them by the melons and said he was their partner, before getting zapped for his aggressive melon fondling. Back at the boarding house, Kagari called Takemi after seeing a news update on the garden. Takemi told her that ashikabis were going to be hunting for Q in the garden that night in an attempt to claim her after a message broadcast was sent out. That evening, Minato was trying to talk to Chio when he asked if he had also seen the message about Q. They then saw MBI cargo choppers before their boss told them to head home as an evacuation alert had been sent out. Moments later, Chio told Minato to head into the garden with him, knowing the evacuation alert was to give them a chance to grab Q. Around the same time, Musubi had found Minato's cell at home and told Mia before heading out to give it to him. After the twins blew up the MBI tanks outside the garden, Minato started having doubts about them, but it was too late to chicken out, so they went in together. After seeing a projection of Q that gave him directions, Minato told Chio, and he decided to help him rescue her. At the entrance, Homura had shown up and turned when he heard Yomi, the Sekirei from when Ku got trapped. She was getting ready to fight her off when she called Akitsu, the homeless hottie from the park, who then used her ice power to attack Homura. After Yomi left, Homura noticed that Akitsu's Sekirei mark was on her forehead and asked if she was a Forsaken number. Just then, he heard someone call him Kagari and saw Musubi, who then apologized for the mix-up and wished him luck before jumping into the garden. While walking with Minato, Chio asked if he knew how to make a Sekirei gain her wings and explained that some ashikabis forced Sekireis into becoming theirs by exchanging mouth liquids without permission. This was why he wanted to help Minato, since his connection with Ku meant they were destined partners. Ku had just woken up in a cave of vines and went to see if Minato had made it, but it was Yoma who then tried to pull her out of the cave. Just then, Minato sensed that Ku was in trouble, started running towards the cave. When Ku refused to go with her, Yomi decided to cut her down, but Minato made it in time to stop her by grabbing onto her melons. She was trying to shake him off her melons when the Thunder Twins zapped them with 1,000,000 volts. When Yomi started roasting Chio, Hikari clapped back with tears in her eyes. While she was distracted, Minato finally met Ku before she passed out into his arms. Yomi was done roasting Chio by then and told Minato to turn her over. Chio stopped the twins from interfering, and as Yomi swung her Grim Reaper's staff, Musubi caught it with her hands and easily snapped the blade in half. After she gave Minato his phone, she got knocked down by an energy slice from Yomi, who was now pissed off. As they fought, Musubi managed to get a few hits in, but they did little to protect her from the energy slashes that tore off half her clothes and left her melons dangling. While Chio watched the show, Yomi couldn't believe that a spineless wuss like Minato had paired with Musubi. She then tore off the rest of Musubi's clothes and aimed for her plot covers. As Yomi got ready for the final hit, Minato told Musubi to run away. When the dust settled, she jumped to shield him and charged straight for Yomi, using Maida's teaching to dodge her attacks before flipping over her and ripping off her clothes. Musubi then used a prayer to absorb Yomi's wings, erasing her Sekirei mark in the process. That moment, Hikagami felt the loss of Yomi's presence and went to pick up Akitsu from her fight with Homura. After Minato, Musubi, and Ku got home, and he told Mia that Ku was a relative's kid. Moments later, he was on the porch with her talking about how he first saw her before falling into the tree. When he rubbed her head and thanked her for saving him, she asked him to be her ashikabi before exchanging mouth fluids with him and getting her wings. At the garden sometime that night, someone else came looking for Q and turned the entire garden into a wasteland. Outside the boarding house that night, Kagari got into a limo with Takami, who wanted to talk about Q. When he tried telling her about Minato, She pulled out a photo of a younger Minato with his sister and mom claiming she already knew enough. The next day, Minato got ready for work and was about to leave when a news update on the garden's overnight weeding came up. He went to check on Ku, who felt the death of the green life she had grown and started crying in his arms. She started talking about someone named Shai who could counter her abilities, and Minato promised to stay with her anytime she needed him, so she cheered up. When Minato got to work later on, he asked for Chio and found out that he had quit the job to handle other personal matters. Meanwhile, Ku was on the porch with Yuzume at the boarding house, having waves of panic attacks as she watched Musubi train with Miya. At the end of the day, Minato walked back home, thinking about all the questions he had for Chio, and dropped when he saw him inside. Apparently, Chio was a friend of Maya's husband, and occasionally liked to pop by whenever his food ran out. He was telling Minato about how the bento box from their first day at work was how he knew where he stayed when he noticed Ku hiding from him. He tried bullying her and nearly got his skull cracked open by a random boulder Miya had lying around. After Miya and Minato went to greet the Thunder Twins, who had come looking for their man, he came out with the food bags he had come to collect and got beat up by his own bitches. Minato interrupted his beating to thank him for his help with Ku, and Siva told him it was because he knew Minato lacked the balls needed to protect the girls.
What do you mean by that?
He then gave him his card in case he needed help again and left with his girls. After, Musubi was in the bath with Yuzume, having a contest to see who could stay in the water for the most time. When Musubi admitted defeat, Yuzume called her a wuss and stood up to leave. Musubi then saw her Sekirei mark again and asked about her Ashikabi. Yuzume claimed it was a secret and explained that certain situations made it impossible for her to be with him at the moment. Sometime that night, Ku got out of bed and went to use the little lady's room. She then saw a creep with mega melons in the mirror and ran to Minato's room, where she spent the rest of the night. The next day, she told them she had seen a ghost at breakfast. Minato had looked through the house with her and Musubi after she ran to them in the night, but he didn't find anyone. When Ku explained the creep's features, Yuzume seemed like she knew the person, but Miya stopped her from telling them. After breakfast, Maya left to visit her husband's grave, and the girls decided to make lunch. When Yuzume took them up to her room, Minato wanted to ask what they planned to cook up there when someone walked through the room behind him, and he noticed. Moments later, he went up to Yuzume's room and saw the girls dressed up in costumes. After Yuzume told them to call her after cooking, they went to the kitchen to whip up a culinary masterpiece, and moments later, they brought out comically large servings of food. Minato passed out with his belly about to explode, and the surveillance stalker started admiring his dad bod. Later that day, Miya got off at the train station and started heading back. Yukari also got off at the station and started using a map to find the boarding house. She was walking along the street when Shaq collided into her. A closer look at his weak features and even weaker face made her heart skip multiple beats. She was trying to check on him when a Sekirai showed up on the roof and told him to stop running. She wanted to take him back to her master, but he refused to go with her, so she pulled out a whip to bash his feeble head in. Yukari managed to push him out of the way in time. When she started yelling at the Sekirai, she felt his insides getting hotter. But they didn't have time for that just yet, as Yukari pulled him to run away from the Sekirai. At the house that evening, Musubi was cleaning when someone walked past her. She went to Minato's room after that and told him Ku was asleep with Yuzume. Remembering what happened with Yomi at the garden, Minato asked Musubi to explain it to him. She told him that they were part of a large game where Sekirais fought each other, and losers were permanently separated from their Ashikabas. Hearing that, his knees got weak, and she pushed him on the ground to tell him that she would keep fighting to be the strongest Sekirai, so they would never have to separate. As Musubi heard Maya's voice the next moment and ran to meet her, the surveillance stalker, who turned out to also be a Sekirai, started to lose control of her thoughts. After Miya sent Musubi on a grocery run, the stalker decided that she had become an enemy. Musubi was on her way to get the groceries when the stalker hacked into an MBI satellite and made it rain lasers on her. Later that evening at the boarding house, Miya prepared the bath for Minato and took Ku with her. After soaking in the bath, he was washing up when he heard the door open and thought Musubi was back. When he felt an unfamiliar set of melons pressed up against his back, he got scared, thinking the stranger was a succubus. While she crawled over to him and uncovered her massive milk jugs that popped his brain, Musubi was dodging flesh-melting laser beams. When he finally asked for her name while staring at her melon tips, Matsu introduced herself. Moments later, Musubi made it back home with her clothes barely hanging on. When she realized that she had missed some of the groceries, she tried to head back out, but Miya stopped her, threatening to kick her out of the house for lacking self-worth before telling her to go take a bath. Minato was still on the ground listening to Matsu, as she called him a worthless simp, while also asking him to clap her and become her Ashikabi. Her psychotic foreplay got interrupted by Musubi, who came in and asked Minato if he needed help getting cleaned up. Matsu was pissed off by the interruption, but claimed she had prepared for Musubi's early return. She suddenly pulled out a mini bazooka from her fish lips and shot Musubi with a military-grade net. With Musubi tied up, she tried to continue with Minato, but he was traumatized at that point. She was convincing him to start with just the tip when Mia put a blade to her neck and told her to keep her overstretched fish lips to herself. After, she apologized to them, and Mia explained that she was also a tenant at the boarding house. Matsu's room was hidden behind a false wall, and when Minato asked why, she told them that she was a fugitive wanted by the MBI. Mia explained that her husband was actually with the MBI before his passing, which was how he met Matsu. She then started to consider kicking her out and changed her mind when Matsu begged and disappeared back into her cave of loneliness. Later that night, Akitsu was looking over the city from a roof when the cowgirl Sakurai showed up asking if she had any luck finding Shy. Just then, Homura showed up and told them to stop building a Sakurai harem from their extremely cultured ashikabi. The wannabe cowgirl then wrapped her with her whip and told Akitsu to put her on ice. After Homura burned up the whip and nearly roasted them, they dipped. At Yukari's house, she took a good look at Shy and started thinking about 70 different positions. When he asked her to become his ashikabi and reached for the mouth fluid exchange, she got scared. Meanwhile, Homura collapsed in an alleyway with his powers going haywire. After pulling off his mask, he tried calling Takami, but the phone melted in his hands. He had already accepted his fate when he got soaked by a couple of liters of water and saw Tsukiyumi, who told him to get his shit together. He then told Tsukiyumi to consider getting a longer outfit before getting back up and asking why she had not found an ashikabi. Tsukiyumi told him she despised the idea of letting some downbat of Taku clap her for no reason, but she had also recently started sensing the presence of her destined partner. Her new mission was to personally take said partner out so she could continue being an unclapped dollar store Wonder Woman. At the boarding house that night, Minato was thinking about Matsu when she showed up to perform their partnership ritual. She was telling him to get his glizzy ready when Mia showed up and punished them by canceling their breakfast. At the top of the MBI tower, Takemi was with Professor Minaka, letting him know that almost all the Sakurai had found partners. In the morning, Minato felt the melons and rice cakes sleeping next to him and thought he was in heaven. Things got better when Matsu woke up and tried to stuff his airways with her morning breath. She ended up clashing lips with Musubi and scared Minato when she tried to take things a step further with the classic three-way. At breakfast, Minato noticed that Yuzume didn't show up again, and Kagari couldn't feed herself as he was wrapped in bandages from what he said was a work accident. Later on, while Musubi trained with Maya, Q and Minato were asleep in the room. He had a dream where Tsukiyumi threatened to end him and almost crapped himself as he woke up. He then got a text from Yukari explaining that she wouldn't be able to visit him for a while and decided to go talk to Matsu about the dream that felt similar to what happened with Ku. In Matsu's woman cave, she explained that the Sakurai system project was about reaching its apex point, as almost all the Sakurai had been winged, which meant that the battle royale that would leave only one Sakurai standing was about to start. While Matsu got excited thinking about the reward for the top spot, Minato wasn't as excited as he was worried about the chance of everyone ending up like Yomi. After Matsu told him not to worry, she asked him about his dream and used the details he gave her to pull up Tsukiyumi's data. She then explained that Tsukiyumi was the kind of toxic chick that could easily destroy a top-level alpha, but with extra Sakurai making their victory more likely. A weak, ugly loser with zero aura, whose life suddenly changed. 5 overpowered baddies started trying to clap him. This story starts in Taito, Japan's capital city. While the other prospects celebrated getting accepted, 19-year-old Minato had managed to fail the college entrance exams again. The news to his mom and nearly getting disowned, a news broadcast about the AI company's CEO planned to buy out the capital city before getting on a train. After staying at the MBI building train ride, he got off at the station. He was heading home when he suddenly heard someone yelling and looked up right before a chick crashed into him. When he opened his eyes, her massive dump truck was inches away from his face. After getting off him, she thanked breaking her fall, and he immediately reached for her milkers. Just then, she shoved him away from a blast and nearly broke his nose with her melons. Her attackers were twins who were itching for a fight that she kept refusing to give them.
What?
They could hit them with another blast. She grabbed Minato and, pulling him along like an inflator. The next morning, Minato's hand fell into 2 massive milkers, seeing the same girl asleep beside him. After waking up, she thanked him while returning them, popping out her gravity-defying melon that ruptured an artery in his head. Tried getting close with her plot uncovered. He ran out the door and tried to wrap his head around but wasn't. After escaping the Thunder Twins the previous day, she saw that he had passed out and apologized to him when he regained consciousness. As Musubi himself and thanked him for helping her. He struggled to speak properly with her melons inches away. Suddenly she passed out and ended up back at his place, where she stuffed her face with burgers and thanked him again. Minato was thinking about the Thunder Twins when Musubi told him that she was homeless and asked if she could stay with him. He then was trying to ask her about the twins, asked him to be her ashikabi. Before he could even ask her what she meant, she grabbed and placed it right on the tip of her melon. Moments later, he was outside thinking again when his landlord showed up to ask if he had company. In his face about the no couples rule, he left in Musubi to apologize for her lack of self-respect after subtly telling her to keep doing what he did exclusively for him. Angry again, so they went to eat at a restaurant. With his monthly allowance spent her feast, he told her he was heading to the bank and she went to get groceries for dinner. On the way to the bank, he ran into the Thunder Twins and they immediately started asking him about Musubi, causing a minor earthquake as she ran with her melons to ask him about his choice dinner. Once they saw her, they merged powers, hit her with a lightning blast that nearly seared off her melons. After saying something about not yet getting her wings yet, they charged up for a second, but Minato shoved her away just in time. As he got off her, he stopped the Thunder Twins. Musubi's love sensors started tingling from his aura and couldn't hear him telling her to escape. He then picked her up and ran, dodging the blast from the chase after them until he ran to an alley. He was trying to catch breath when she lost control and pushed him up a wall, begging him to clap her right there. After she pushed him down and pressed his hand into her mouth, he was about to give her what she wanted, but then the twins cornered to make sure they couldn't escape. Not caring about her life, Musubi started getting closer, and Hibiki ran to stop her, but they didn't make it in time. The moment she exchanged mouth juices with him, the light exploded out of her back. Kagari then pulled Minato back and his face off when Musubi told her to stop. Charged straight for her, Kagari took Minato aside before blocking inches and leaving with her sister, claiming Wayne girls. They had just gotten to an alleyway with Homura, who called them spineless bitches for trying to jump a Sakuragi before it hit her wings. They had started challenging him when he asked if they wanted to get smoked, and they got scared. Luckily, Musubi had already gotten her wings, so he just hey! Them. Later that day, Minato called his sister for some clothes so Musubi could stop wearing what he had. After the call, he was staring at rice cakes as she cooked while thinking about what happened with the twins. When the TV suddenly came on, he was about to turn it off when the guy inside told him to. Musubi said she knew the professor, and a closer look reminded him of the news broadcast from the play. The CEO professor then told Minato that he had been chosen to become a Sakurai's partner. After explaining that he was now part of a game where Sakurais like Musubi each other, with help from partners like him, the professor told him to keep the game secret and threatened to unalive him if he snitched before leaving. Moments later, Minato got a box from an MBI goon and thought they were about to clap him. After Gu clothes for Musubi from the box, he was about to leave space when she called him back to promise her loyalty. Their moment got interrupted by his landlord, who had just confirmed his suspicion and decided to make them homeless. Early the next day, they were working to a new landlord hoping to get a place, but he rejected them. After Musubi gave him a pep talk, he got motivated to keep searching for a new place, and by nightfall, they were at a park bench getting rejected by over 30 landlords. As it was raining, Minato told Musubi to consider choosing him to be her partner. A brokey with incredibly low testosterone made him unfit for random battles. She responded by telling him she wasn't before shutting him up with a kiss that activated her wings. Using her powers, she set a sec before grabbing him and creating a tornado she used to take him above the clouds. Somewhere in a forest that night, a little girl was trapped crying after spending a couple of seconds suspended in the upper atmosphere. Gravity did its thing and sent the lovebirds falling to their end. Minato saw a ghost flying towards them. They both crashed into a tree and fell to the ground. As he opened his eyes to Musubi's dirty plot, a lady from the compound they crashed into came out and asked who they were. Moments later, Minato got cleaned up with help from Kagari, and when he asked about what happened, he remembered the professor's threat and blamed it on bad weather. Just then, Musubi came out wearing a kimono she got from. After thanking her, they mistook Kagari to the man of the house, but Mia's husband had passed on a while ago. Forgetting that they were floating brokies, Musubi asked what Mia was cooking, and she was luckily kind enough to fix them. While they ate what would be their first meal of the day, chick melons that were beyond the effects of gravity showed up to join them. He asked Mia if they were all related, and told him that they were actually her tenants. Zoom said the boarding house was slowly looking like a crack house and all evicted by Mia. Minato begged her for a room, when she easily agreed to let them get a room. Kagari asked Mia if she actually started taking crack. Mia said she was trying to live up to her husband's kindness, actually liked the lovebirds, so she decided to stay. Kagari ended up skipping dinner after getting an important work call. At his place later on, Musubi was in the shop. Minato watched the news about an abnormal forest growth in the MBI's botanical garden. Off the TV, he called his mom to tell her about the move and begged for some money. After she called him useless and hung up the phone, Minato's brain fried when he saw Musubi's entire as she came out to ask for some. She then tripped and fell on him, suffocating him with her mouth before apologizing for coming on too strong. In the park that night, a homeless trying to nap on a bench when an ashikabi showed up and told her to become his clap toy. Next day, Yukari pulled up to Minato with the clothes he asked for. When he asked her why she didn't just send it, she told him she had been into a local college and wanted to check it out. She didn't tell him over so he wouldn't unalive himself due to being a repeat failure. After Musubi came to meet her and almost exposed their secret, she went to try out the clothes Yukari brought them to clean, looking like one of Johnny Sins' co-workers. After, Yukari felt melons and told Minato she was proud of him before leaving. They then easily lifted everything they had packed and explained that being a fist type gave her super strength as they walked to the boarding house. When they got to the boarding house, welcomed them and showed them to their rooms, where Minato nearly blew out his lungs helping pull in their stuff. After Mia left, reminded her to keep her Sakurai life a secret to avoid getting clipped by the professor. When she promised to keep him safe, he had to remind himself that he was the man in the relationship. While they were settling into the room, an introverted creep was watching her and move from her surveillance room. Lovebirds came down for dinner, leaving after deciding to skip, and Mia told him he had a busy life as a clap club host. Minato then asked Musubi if she knew what it was, and she told him show him a couple of tricks she had seen on the hub. The images of her plot in different angles nearly blew his cultured mind up. Tried to stop his leaking nose. Mia told Musubi to get a shower so she wouldn't stink up the place with her fish pipe. After taking a look at the bath, she tried to get him to share it with her, but he bitched and went to sit on the porch. After she got in, Yuzume showed up with her mega melons and joined her. While sitting out, Minato had the weird fall from the other night and went to check out the tree. When he touched it, he saw the from that night asking him for help. In the bath, Yuzume rinsed off her back and Musubi saw that she was also a Sakurai. Then Musubi started attacking her, and she managed to dodge her wall-smashing punches before running out of the bath while Musubi chased after. Minato was trying to understand what he just saw when Yuzume jumped the window and flashed him as she landed on the fence. Asking if he was Musubi's ashikabi, jumped over to him and asked him to control his bitch. Musubi jumped out after her Yuzume to keep her melons away from Minato. She was about to land another when Mia stopped it and smacked her with a spoon. She then explained that there was a no-violence policy with a scary aura that left them terrified as she went back inside. Construction site that evening, a worker got a text about a new Sakurai in the city. That night, a blonde chick was looking at the forest in the botanical garden when showed up. She challenged him to a duel, but he used a smoke bomb to escape while telling her to get a man. Later that night, Minato had a dream where he walked through a forest and found the tree girl on a branch. After breaking her fall with his body, Kus crying while blaming herself for something and begged him as she got sucked back into the forest. After waking up sweating, he saw Musubi's melons hurt his face and told about it. Asleep in the forest that night, Ku dreamt of the day she was playing outside until Takami told her to head back to the lab. On way, she was telling her about finding her ashikabi when it stood up and cut out Takami's eye. Her ashikabi then tried to take Q, and she almost tore off his face. She got scared and ended up creating the forest she was now trapped in. Minato woke up and started thinking about the dream from last night. Musubi was also up, and as she was packing up the futon, enjoying the view when they heard slashing and went to the balcony to see Mia slicing up leaves with her sword. Amazed by Mia's skill, Musubi jumped off the balcony. And after her melons defied the laws of nature when she landed, she asked Mia for a sparring match. Ran down and made it just in time to see Mia dodge Musubi's first punch. Yuzume also got to see, and when he tried to get her to stop, she told him to shut up and watch. Mia schooled Musubi. Yuzume used the opportunity to tell Minato to clap if he felt like it. He was shocked by how she easily tried to get his glizzy and realized that he was running late work. After hours of manual labor at the construction site later on, and unwrapped the bento box Mia gave him before he left. The moment he saw the Michelin star Mia had made for him, he couldn't hold back, and a coworker started drooling beside him. After letting him have a rice ball, they got acquainted and talked their lack of economic use. Just then, the Thun twins showed up, and Akari ran up to Spurs, whipping Chio with a nasty kick to the face. While apologizing to Minato for Chio's dignity, they recognized each other, and Minato dropped his food box in surprise. She was giving him some bread to make up for when Chio grabbed both of them by the melon and said he was their partner before getting zapped for his aggressive melon falling. Back at the boarding house, Kagari called The next day, citizens were stuck in traffic at the exit bridges trying to get past MBI military personnel. During all the commotion, a couple managed to sneak past some guards, but when one noticed them, they made a run for it. They didn't get far before the blue sakurai stopped them and gave them a chance to go back. Kono tried to get Hakura to turn back, but he had a different idea and jumped off as the soldiers caught up. At the boarding house that evening, Minato and the girls were cleaning up the bathroom on orders from Maya. While the girls were actually cleaning up, Minato was in a different mental space, thinking about all the things he wanted to do to Musubi's melons. Tsukiyomi had sensed his cultured thinking and threatened to smash his guts in before offering up her melons for whatever cultured activity he was planning.
That's what I'm talking about.
When Ku also had the same idea, Mia showed up after likely realizing that it was a bad idea to leave him alone with them in the bathroom. Minato and Ku met Matsu in her room moments later to get her to come out. She was nose deep in her systems, and when he asked her why, she showed them the MBI secret database. She had been using it to track Sakurai activity and fights to stay a foot ahead of the competition, but something more interesting had already happened. She had seen the data on the dagger slinger's loss, but there was no data on the Sakurai that beat her. This was against the rules, as Sakurai were expected to watch over those they defeated until the company's personnel showed up to retrieve their data. With the toilet paper assassin not even hanging back to get her victory submitted to the database, something was off. Moments later, Musubi went to check on Yuzume, but she wasn't in her room. She was at a hospital checking on someone named Chio. Back at the boarding house later on, Minato was packing up the laundry when Mia showed up to thank him. Ku then popped out wearing another one of Yuzume's costumes. When he asked why Yuzume had so many costumes, Mina thought he was one of those extreme roleplay freaks, but he claimed to just be curious. She then told him that there was a special someone Yuzume had gotten all those costumes for, but said the person had been hospitalized for a while and Yuzume could now only see them for brief periods. Expecting the groceries to arrive soon, Mia went back inside and moments later, Musubi and Tsukiyomi raced each other to the entrance, with Musubi taking the win again. Tsukiyomi was trying to justify her low cardio strength when Minato interrupted them to schedule a harem meeting later. At the hospital, Chio finally woke up and thanked Yuzume for showing up. She then apologized for being a vegetable who couldn't do anything for Yuzume despite being her ashikabi, but Yuzume was only glad she was alive. In Matsu's room later on, the girls had gathered for the harem meeting, where Minato told them about the suspicious Sakurai assassin and asked them to be careful. The girls seemed to have been hearing through their special holes as their adrenaline levels went through the roof with excitement to take on whoever was abusing the Sakurai customs. Later that night, Minato was in his room when Tsukiyomi walked in and stood with her fish lips over his head. When he got up, she asked if he was worried about her, and for the first time, he took a good look at her face and realized that there was a lot more to her than the mega melons she was carrying around. After she left, he was about to head out when he saw Musubi at the door and nearly coughed up his heart. She said she only wanted to escort him to the dinner table, and he could not help but feel like his life was being threatened as she walked behind him. Matsu was also watching them and sensed the darkness in Musubi's emotionless face. Just then, Yuzume came back from what she said was a busy day at work, and Matsu noticed a blood stain on her jord as she went in for dinner. After dinner, Yuzume went to the bathroom and tucked away the bloody jord before going to join Musubi and Tsukiyomi in the bath. As they both started arguing about their places in Minato's harem, Yuzume told them she hoped things would stay the same. Tsukiyomi then reminded her that they were still likely to end up fighting each other since Yuzume had her own ashikabi. While they talked, Matsu snuck in to take a better look at the blood stain on Yuzume's jords. In the city that night, Mikogami was with Matsu talking about how Karasuba had taken out his horsewhip Sakurai. Matsu reminded him that the disciplinary Sakurai, like Karasuba, were also a part of the game, so he decided to focus on getting Shi from Yukari. At Yukari's place later on, she made dinner and was still finding it difficult to make physical contact with Shai. To change the mood, she asked him about the person he was looking for and found out that Ku was his long-lost younger sister. After telling him about her childhood memories with Minato, Yukari decided to help her find Ku, and while they talked about it, Akitsu was watching them from a roof. The next day, Yuzume was leaving Chio's room when she saw a man in a suit and tried walking away. He complimented her on her instant clap abilities and gave her Kuno's picture, placing her as the next target to be taken out and reminding her of Chio's deteriorating state as she left. On the roof of the boarding house, Musubi and Tsukiyomi were getting ready to go hunt down the Sakurai abusing the rules, and Minato was trying to get them to change their minds. Tsukiyomi suddenly attacked Musubi, but their light match ended seconds later with Musubi almost smashing in her face and Tsukiyomi deciding she was good enough to fight with her. Elsewhere in the city, Haruka was still running with Kuno until she face planted into the pavement and still had her mascara intact for some reason.
That's weird.
He was checking on her when the toilet paper Sakurai caught up to them and told him to leave her behind. He said he was too Sigma to do such a thing, so she decided to take them both out. Just then, Kono let out a siren scream that sent insane shockwaves through the city. Musubi and Tsukiyumi had also heard it by then and headed to their location. Haruka was hyping up Kuno's sonic scream when the toilet paper Sakurai got back up and resumed her attacks. They were saved by a wall of water as Tsukiyumi and Musubi showed up and challenged the Sakurai to a proper match. The toilet paper Sakurai, who turned out to be Yuzume, didn't know what to do as she didn't want to fight them yet. Haruka decided to use the opportunity to escape and was trying to get Kuno to stand up when he sensed something and turned to see someone's hot ex destroying her liver with sake and almost burning off Haruka's nostrils with her booze breath. After Yuzume blocked Tsukiyumi's first water attack, Musubi got excited seeing she was strong. While Tsukiyumi charged up for the second attack, the alcoholic started walking over to Yuzume with her melons, causing a commotion. After sending out the water dragon, she stopped it when the Mega Melons drunkard stood in between them. She told Tsukiyumi to stop picking unfair fights, reminding her that she was trying to 2v1 Yuzume with Musubi. She then told Musubi to deal with Kuno, so they could all have fair fights. When Musubi introduced herself to Kuno and asked for a fight, she took one look at Musubi's enormous assets and told Haruka she didn't stand a chance. While Haruka explained their stand on avoiding combat, Tsukiyumi was already trying to take out Yuzume. When Kazehana interrupted the match again, Tsukiyumi told her to get her junky rice cakes into rehab, so she decided to side with Yuzume. After revealing that she was also a Sakurai, Kazehana activated her powers and vanished with Yuzume, and Tsukiyumi realized that Musubi was missing. On a roof with Yuzume moments later, Kazehana asked her about Maeda, and Yuzume decided to respond by challenging her to a battle. At the boarding house, Minato was getting used to being a stay-at-home husband when Matsu came out to see him. After explaining that his joblessness was why he picked up laundry duties, she gave him her outfit. Seeing his reaction to her uncovered plot, she remembered that the others had gone out and tried to clap him. Kagari happened to be coming up at the time and ended up giving Minato room to escape. Matsu then tried to continue with him and instantly got lit up. Kagari then asked Matsu for some medicine, and she reminded him that they were only a temporary fix to the pain. When he explained that his body was still not returning to normal, Matsu started getting nosy, so he left. Minato was outside handling the laundry when Musubi dropped out of the sky and landed on his head. After the stench of her plot made his nose bleed, she got up and dragged him along like an inflatable to go see someone. She took him to his old place, where she had stashed Haruka and Kuno. After introducing themselves, she told him about her plans to save them from the game and asked for his help with it. At the boarding house moments later, Tsukiyumi went to Matsu's room looking for Musubi. After hearing that she had left with Minato, she told Matsu about her fight with Yuzume, which reminded Matsu of the bloodstain from Yuzume's jork the other night. Tsukiyumi also told her about Kuno and started wondering why the professor let someone as weak as her fight in the game. When Yuzume explained that some of them actually knew how to use their brains to fight, Tsukiyumi could sense the subtle anger in her voice and wanted to see if her brain could get her out of taking a knocked punch. Just then, Ku showed up and almost destroyed Matsu's room with one of her plans to stop them from fighting and pulled them along with her to take a bonding bath. At Minato's old place, he had just found out that Hakura was also a repeat failure like him who couldn't get into college and finally felt like he had found a friend. The only difference between them was the fact that Musubi was thicker than your stepmom and Kuno looked like she was in withdrawal. Hakura then explained things in detail to Minato, telling him about Kuno's crippling weakness that gave them absolutely no chance at even surviving the game. This was why they wanted to drop out of the game and leave the city. When Minato asked Hakura why he didn't just walk out the border, he asked him if he was snorting nose candy before showing him the MBI choppers patrolling the entire city. He also told him about the Sakurai that looked like Ryuk from Death Note and explained that escape was impossible for them. Hakura spent the rest of the evening comparing Kuno's lack of estrogen to Musubi's megamelons until she had to beg him to stop. By nightfall, Minato left with Musubi, and when they got back, Tsukiyumi and Ku were waiting at the door to interrogate him. When they asked if he had performed any cultured acts on Musubi while they were out, she told them he had only managed to stick in the tip. And Tsukiyumi spent the rest of the evening pounding his noggin into the floor. Much later, Yuzume and Kazehana had finished annihilating their livers and stumbled into the boarding house, where they somehow ended up in Minato's room. In the morning, the sight of their top-grade plots almost made him go insane. To make matters worse, the girls showed up after hearing him scream, and Tsukiyumi woke the drunkards up with her speaker voice. Immediately, Kazehana laid eyes on Minato. She treated him like they were childhood lovers and was about to eat his face off, but Tsukiyumi smacked them with water. Mia stopped her from finishing them off and told Kazehana to get some clothes. After Yuzume covered up her identity from them by claiming she randomly ran into Kazehana at a bar, they sat for breakfast, and Minato told them about Hakura's plan to escape with Kuno. He went to Matsu's room later to see if there was a way to help them escape. and she told him that he was in over his head. She then pulled up an image of the island where Manaka and Takemi first found the Sekirai in an abandoned vessel. A fraction of the technology Manaka had found on the ship was what caused the sudden growth of the MBI company to what it had become, and the Sekirai project was all the company was focused on. She told him that an attempt to escape from the city or stop the game from playing out as it should would put him on the company's radar, and all of them combined would not be enough to save him. Moments later, he was on the porch thinking about everything, and Musubi joined in to fuel his delusional suicide mission. On a cold winter day, Kuno found herself trying to outrun the Thunder Twins as they tried to put her out of her misery. After tripping and bruising her knee, her sonic scream stopped them in their tracks, giving her a chance to escape. She was sitting by a building, freezing in the snow later in the night when Hakura found her and asked if she was okay. After giving her some warm dumplings to help with the cold, he turned to leave. Watching him walk away, she realized he was the one and ran up to stop him. Hearing the origin of their love story, Kazehana started tweaking and told Kuno not to think too much about being weaker than Sakura. After Hakura asked Minato why he brought the lovesick drunk along with them to Chio's place, Chio lost his and told Minato to take his harem out of his apartment. Minato apologized for the intrusion, and his rage immediately vanished. He then told them to pay up if they wanted his help with the escape. And as Hakura started to argue with him, Minato made a phone call. The moment Chio heard Maya's voice over the phone, he apologized for charging them and put Minato in a chokehold for resorting to such methods. At the boarding house, Tsukiyumi was watching Minato with Matsu and was struggling to understand why he was trying to go against the MBI. When she tried to get Matsu to side with her, Matsu reminded her of their duty to help Minato, and she called her a cultured brain-rot nerd before walking out to sit by herself on the porch. After Muya and Ku came out to hang up the laundry, Tsukiyumi spoke to her about the rest of the gang's decision to help Kuno and Hakura avoid fighting. She started talking about how it was a Sekirai's duty to fight when Miya asked if she was just jealous of the fact that Hakura wanted to elope with this girl. She admitted to being a bit jealous and told Miya she was addicted to fighting because she wanted to be strong enough to have a happily ever after with Minato. Miya then told her to head to the backyard for a quick sparring session to test her strength. At Chio's place, he gave them a rundown of the territory arrangements of the city. The south belonged to Mikogami, the dude trying to stack his harem like a Lego set. The west to some Sonata dude, and the east to Higa, another anti-MBI activist who had more Sekirais than King Solomon had wives. At the time, Higa was outside Chio's hospital with his assistant, and Yuzume had seen them through the window. At the vending machine moments later, Higa's assistant gave her another chance to deal with Kuno as Chio's life was apparently in Higa's control. Back at Chio's place, Minato asked about the person in charge of the north, and Chio described a demon that sounded very similar to a certain someone. Musubi also pointed out that their boarding house was in the north, and at that moment, Miya was just starting her sparring match with Tsukiyumi. After easily blocking one of Tsukiyumi's strongest attacks, Miya swung her sword to kick up some dust that tossed open Tsukiyumi's plot. Moya then used the opening to swing by in an instant and land a hit that instantly shredded everything Tsukiyumi was wearing. She was trying to understand Maya's insane strength when she saw that the sword swing from earlier had created a small crater in the yard. After explaining territories, Chio told them about a river separating Taito from other cities that was their best chance at escaping. With the MBI in control of regular transportation systems in the water as well, their best bet was to get over the bridge. The first problem was the satellite, but thankfully, Minato had a master hacker in his harem. They had to deal with a disciplinary Sekirai as well, so Musubi offered to fight them off. With that, the plan was set, and Kuno started apologizing to Hakura for being too weak to fight on her own. When the twins reminded her that she could have just let them take her out back then, Musubi cheered her up with the usual one-sentence pep talk, and Hakura promised to stop calling her useless. By nightfall, they were all in Matsu's room making sure she could handle the hacking when Kazehana called them out to a party. The party was a send-off for the eloping lovebirds and another opportunity for Kazehana to destroy her liver. While the girls partied, Hakura had a talk with Minato and suggested that he join them for the escape. Just then, he sought Tsukiyumi outside and went to talk to her. She told him she had been training when he asked about her torn-up clothes and said their plan was stupid when he tried to pitch it to her. While they spoke, Yuzume got back from the hospital and ran into Kazehana, who told her to consider going against Higa. Knowing Tsukiyumi was upset with the suicide mission, Minato went to apologize, and she responded by placing his hand on the exposed tip of her melon. With both their faces instantly turning red, she was about to blow him on the spot when Matsu came out to call him and ruined the moment. After she went back in, Tsukiyumi ran away in embarrassment, and Minato's brain went into overload as he realized what just happened. The next morning, Minato woke up to the girls crushing him again and got a check-in call from Yukari. She was still dragging Shai around in a maid's outfit while Akitsu and a new partner stalked them. Later that morning, Maya met Kagari as he was cleaning up to talk about some changes she was noticing in his body. He blamed it on work, but she knew he had not been clocking in for some time, so he changed the topic and left, claiming to be okay. Tsukiyumi was on the roof moments later when Ku showed up to talk to her. She was upset about her decision to not support the escape attempt and told her she didn't deserve to be in the harem before leaving. That night, they all got out to start the mission, and Minato noticed that Tsukiyumi was still not coming. With no time to waste, he told Hakura and the rest of them to stick with the plan, and Matsu got started with the hacking. At Karasuba's pool in the MBI company building, the Blue Sakurai had heard about something suspicious going on in the north. Karasuba told her Red was already headed out to handle it, so she decided to go join the party. When Natsu asked about the origins of the disciplinary unit, Karasuba told him about Yume. Years ago, she had taken out the special ops of a private company before rescuing a young captive Sakurai. After meeting Karasuba, who had piled up the local military outside, Yume transferred her wings to the young Sakurai. Karasuba then told Natsuo that Yume died shortly after that. On a roof somewhere in the city, Kazehana was back to murdering her liver cells when Homura showed up to ask if she was going to help with the escape plan. Kazehana told her she needed at least 2 more bottles to even consider it, and Homura decided to also see if Minato's delusional escape plan could actually work. Minato and Musubi were with the eloping lovers hiding by bushes to find an opening to make their escape run, while Matsu worked on the satellites and Chio was waiting by the gates with his girls. Once Matsu took out the satellites, the couples took off running to get to the bridge. Chio then exchanged mouth juices with his girls, activating their twin power, which they used to draw the attention of the MBI soldiers. Ku then went to deceive them with her cuteness until one of them recognized her, and she unleashed her plant powers, capturing them and toppling their tanks. As the couples bolted to the bridge, Hakura was starting to have doubts, so Minato reminded him that failing the escape meant getting clapped, and that was enough to keep his legs moving. On the MBI company roof, Takemi had received reports and tried to give Minaka an update, but he already knew what was happening and actually expected it. Matsu was communicating with Chio at the time and started to notice something weird. The MBI reinforcements were moving way too fast for people who had been caught off guard, so Matsu told them to abort the mission as they had likely been found out. Chio and his girls had already been surrounded, and they accidentally zapped him, burning up his phone and the only way of reaching Matsu. While they fought back to escape, Matsu contacted Minato, who was planning to go save Ku from the company on his own. She told him it would be impossible for him, as the disciplinary unit wouldn't hesitate to clap him on sight, but he decided to at least try. After he hung up the phone to set up a new plan with Musubi, Matsu changed her mind and called to tell them to continue heading to the bridge. Tsukiyumi was on the roof thinking about him when the entire house started to shake. A compartment in the ground opened up, and Matsu came out with it on her bike. When Tsukiyumi reminded her that she had to keep her existence a secret, she told her that it wasn't right to sit back while Minato had all the fun. Back on the bridge, Minato told them to leave Ku up to Matsu, and Chio got saved from the soldiers by his girls. The soldiers had already surrounded Ku by then and were about to hit her with poison gas when Matsu blew up their tanks as she made an epic entrance. After picking up Ku, they called Minato to give him an update, and Matsu drove off hoping to make things easier for the others by giving Ku a bazooka to shoot plant globes. The globes exploded into monster plants that made the roads useless, stopping the MBI operations control from effectively coordinating units. At Yukari's place, Shai saw the effects of Ku's powers through the window and bolted out with Yukari to find her. Using Ku's distraction, Musubi knocked out the last soldier before they all started running across the bridge. They could already see the exit point when Musubi made them stop after sensing someone. The red and blue Sakurai had shown up to give them a final chance at changing their minds. Musubi told them to shove the last chance up their rice cakes and charged at them. After she and Red did a lot of flying kicks with none landing a single hit, Red decided to get serious with her fists. When Musubi called her a knockoff version of the fist types, she got pissed and broke her jawbone with an uppercut that flipped her 15 feet up. Red then jumped and destroyed the rest of Musubi's organs with a flurry of punches before she crashed into the ground. After stomping on her head, Red turned to leave and Musubi grabbed her ankle. Unfazed by the pounding she just took, she threw Red away like a cardboard cutout and told Minato she was okay. After falling back on the tracks, Ren went beast mode and hit them with an energy blast that blew a hole in the bridge. Musubi was trying to find Minato when Red went crazy on her with multiple attacks that she still managed to dodge before smacking Red into the bridge's steel structure. When Musubi saw Minato hanging off the edge of the blown-up bridge, she tried to get him out, but Red came back and stood on his fingers. As Blue stopped Hakura and Kono from escaping, Red made Musubi stand still so she could try her combos again. This time, she actually landed the hits and used a supercharged energy blast to obliterate Musubi's spinal cord. After falling with her melons exposed from the blast, she heard Minato struggling to get up and started crawling over to him. Minato was about to grab her hand when Red stood over her and delivered the finishing blow. At the boarding house, Tsukiyumi was thinking about Minato when Mia told her that standing running around while her man risked his life made her useless to the harem. The shock from the realization made her fall off the roof, and moments later, Mia was there at the back as she seemed to have finally understood her purpose. She left to go help Minato, who managed to crawl over to Musubi just in time to see her Sakurai mark vanish. After trying to get her to wake up and remembering her promise to stay with him forever, he started crying. Red told him to clean his tears as she grabbed him by the collar, promising to reunite them soon enough. Blue then went to deal with the escaping lovebirds and gave Haruka a body modification. Remembering how he accepted her request to be her ashikabi after she soaked his scarf in tears, Kuno helped him up and decided to use a prayer. With a kiss from him, she activated her wings and used the enhanced power to sing a siren song that covered the entire area in its waves. The siren song made Blue's knees weak, and as she fell to the ground, Hakura found his balls again. When Blue eventually passed out from Kuno's singing, Red tried to call out to her, but she also started getting affected. Just then, Kuno's vocal cords ran out of juice and exploded out her throat as she fell back into Haruka's arms. As she apologized to him for being useless again, Red told them her little performance was pointless. Minato had a different opinion while still holding on to Musubi, and Red reminded him that he was about to join her in paradise. Before she could land the hit, an insane blast of water knocked her away as Tsukiyumi finally made her superhero entrance. She saw Musubi in Minato's arms and ran over to get her to wake up. When Red told them to give up on trying to bring her back, Tsukiyumi went crazy with anger and blasted them with water bullets. After dodging, Blue managed to snag a piece of her clothes with her claws and told her she had no chance against both of them. As she pulled out a water blade, Kazehana decided to ditch Homura for a better view of the fight. During the countless attempts to land a hit on Blue, Tsukiyumi remembered the time she spent with Musubi and used that as fuel as she cut down the bridge to knock Blue off balance. Red used the opening to get a hit in, but moments later, she was the one with a cut and started to realize that Minato must have been a rise master to be able to pull baddies like that. He was still crying over Musubi when he saw Red getting ready to take him out. Tsukiyumi tried running to save him, but Blue got in the way, keeping her busy with attacks until she brought down half the bridge to stop Tsukiyumi from moving. Yuzume tried to go help them, but Kazehana stopped her, saying she was expecting someone. In the city, Yukari and Shai were walking through Ku's monster plants when they heard a bike approaching. When Matsu stopped to call Minato as the satellite deactivation was getting close to being countered, Shai sensed Ku. Back on the bridge, Minato's phone was ringing, but he was occupied with Red trying to send him to heaven. As he rammed his skull into hers and knocked her down, Matsu decided to head to the bridge with Ku. Shai got to their location a second later and saw Mikogami and his Securies. With a single touch, Mikogami paralyzed him and told him to join his rainbow harem. Before Yukari could make a full sentence, Akitsu and Matsu blocked her off. Shai broke free from Mikogami's grip just in time to save Yukari from getting cut down. They both professed their love for each other before exchanging mouth fluids, which activated Shi's wings. With his Sakurai prayer, his anti-nature skill started sucking away the surrounding life forms, so Mikogami dipped with his harem. Back on the bridge, Blue roasted Red for getting knocked down by a civilian. She got pissed off and was about to take Minato out when Musubi's body suddenly started to glow. Minato momentarily entered a trance where he saw her drowning before she opened her eyes and started to levitate. After her melons rose a couple of feet into the air, the number 8 appeared on her belly as she stood up and told them to spread love while calling herself Yume. When Red asked if she had lost some brain cells, she told her to shut her up and show some respect. As Ren responded by attacking with Blue, her eyes changed as she activated an attack while holding onto her mega melons and blasted them with an insane amount of energy that almost burnt down the entire bridge. Moments later, Matsu got to the bridge with Ku, and Blue was trying to figure out who the hell they were fighting. She claimed to be Yume, head of the disciplinary unit, but Red said their only leader was Karasuba. Yume responded by grabbing them by the ankle and throwing them across the country. She then turned to face the terrified faces of Minato and the girls. She told them not to worry and walked over to Minato before enchanting him with her aura and stuffing his face into her melons. Tsukiyumi and Ku were trying to stop the cultured reunion when Karasuba showed up. She immediately attacked Yume and did nothing but fail to land a single hit while Yume told her to work on her skills. She was about to finally land a hit but suddenly stopped as she realized that Musubi was back in control. When Minato heard her voice, he ran over to hug her, and Tsukiyumi challenged Karasuba to another fight. She told her they had other things to worry about and left as the timer for the satellite's deactivation went off. As the laser blast burned through the bridge, Hakura and Kuno fell through, but they were saved by Yuzume and Kazehana's powers. As the sun rose, Haruka asked Minato to leave with them, but he refused, saying he had something to do in the city. As the lovebirds ran off to their freedom, Yuzume watched them with Kazehana, who was sober enough to see that Minato had some alpha potential. Pissed off by his weakness, Minato apologized to the girls with tears in his eyes, and as usual, Musubi gave him a pep talk to make him feel better. The rest of them were not good with words, so they cheered him up the only way they knew how. At the boarding house later that morning, Chio was stuffing his face while the twins begged Maya to forgive his incompetence again. Minato, on the other hand, was getting his face stuffed by the girls as they fought over feeding rights. In the MBI building, Kurasuba had a chat with Matsu about their recent interesting turn of events, and Takami was trying to understand how Musubi came back from limbo. Elsewhere in the city, a Sakurai got dropped, and her Ashikabe got his nuts crushed as Yukari and Shai were still trying to find Ku. Later on, Kagari was on the roof at the boarding house, and Kazehana joined her as Minato left to head to cram school. While the girls found a way to argue about rights to see him off, Kazehana told Kagari to stop ignoring his body before leaving. With the escape of the lovebirds being a success, what happens to the Sakurai still in the city, and has Kagari secretly been reacting to Minato all this time? That is it for this video. Leave a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe to the channel for similar content.
2 years ago, military troops consisting of tanks and choppers mobilized on a secluded island to locate a target, but things took a turn when one of the pilots saw Kazehana standing alone and got blown to bits. After she blew up the rest of the choppers, the soldiers and tanks tried to figure out what happened, but a Sekirei named Matsu almost booked them a one-way trip to the afterlife. They all ran out to escape, but Karasuba swiftly sliced through them like butter while dodging bullets like she grew up with John Wick. Before the Navy units could understand the situation, they got blown up by the sheer force of Muya's slice, and Matsu was all for it. In current times, the travel ban keeping the citizens of Taito from leaving had gotten a lot stricter because of Shigi and Kuno's successful escape. Minato and Ku were still watching the news when Musubi called him to the kitchen and asked for help getting a pot. Just as he was about to get it, she tripped and blinded him with her melons. Moments later, she got started on lunch since Maya was out running errands, and Minato offered to help, but he regretted that decision when the onions caused him to tear up. Musubi was trying to help him clean off the tears when Ku started pulling him away so she could do it herself. They told her the kitchen was too dangerous and promised to let her help with something else, but she got pissed and activated her plant powers. Just then, Minato saw Matsu laughing at them from the ceiling and told her to help out. So she tried to climb out, but Ku's vine snatched her up and made a Minato sandwich with both of their plots. While Matsu had no problem pressing into Minato's cakes, he was struggling to get his face out of Musubi's mega melons until Tsukiyomi found them and started interrogating him. Minato tried to explain the situation, but she was already pissed and attacked with her water skill, which only made the vines grow even larger than before. Moya got back moments later and decided to punish them for turning her boarding house into a cultured playground. Minato led the cleanup in tears and woke Kazehana, who immediately went back to destroying her liver. Mia asked if she planned to continue living as a freeloader, and Kazehana remembered it was the anniversary of her husband's death, so she asked if he would like the way things had turned out, and Mia said he would have definitely done something to stop Minaka's madness. After Maya talked about the beauty of finding an Ashikabe and experiencing the kind of love Minato had with his harem, Kazehana said she was actually hanging around to see if he would trigger the same feeling in her. After Minato and the girls safely finished making lunch without another cultured episode, they started heading to the dinner table and ran into Uzume, who had just gotten out of bed. She complimented Musubi's cooking and said she would have loved to grab a bite if she didn't have something urgent to attend to. Ku then promised to leave some for later, and Uzume thanked her before turning to leave. While Minato was talking to Musubi about an uneasy feeling he had about Uzume, she had just gotten into her flip-flops and saw Kagari, who had been waiting to talk to her. Kagari said it was technically against the rules for Uzume's actions to be easily forgiven, but still offered to help if anything was bothering her. Uzume told her to stop playing mum and said Kagari could forget about her if something ever happened. Kazehana and Matsu overheard their conversation, but Minato called Kazehana for lunch, so she quickly covered up her creepy surveillance feeds. She got up to join him and tripped over a cord, but her mummy milkers broke the fall and instantly scrambled Minato's brain. Matsu thought it would be the perfect opportunity to finally have some fun and started taking off his shirt, but Mia crashed the party and canceled their lunch as punishment. Afterwards, Uzume got to the hospital where Kakizaki was waiting to remind her of her disobedience when she helped the lovebirds skip town. He started threatening Chio, so Uzume swore never to go against orders again, and he told her to expect new ones before leaving. She immediately ran up to Chiho's room to see if she was feeling any pain, but Chiho said she was okay and felt good seeing her. Uzume told her how happy she was to be her Sekirei, but Chio felt bad for not being able to do much and shared her dream of going outside again. At the MBI company building that night, Bennett Tsubasa and Haihane were in the shower talking about the disciplinary unit's records. After what happened with Musubi, Haihane did some research and discovered there were 2 generations of the disciplinary unit before theirs, and Yume was in the second. She didn't find any information on the first generation, but all Benitsubasa wanted to know was if Musubi and Yume were the same person. Just then, Harasuba came in and said they were 2 entirely different people, but it didn't matter since Yume wasn't alive anymore. Benitsubasa was still curious, so Karasuba asked if she was still pissed about almost getting sent to the Lord, and said she was actually looking forward to seeing if she could force Yume out again. Later on, she was in her room, still pissed, when Haihane came in to tell her about another duo trying to skip town. The lovebirds thought they could become the next Bonnie and Clyde by making it past the border, but Benitsubasa got to them and gave them a chance to go back in one piece. The Sekirai pulled out a staff and attacked, but Benitsubasa dodged all her attacks before popping her melons open with a kick. Little Miss Independent still thought she had a shot, so Benitsubasa launched her into flight mode with an uppercut and slammed her into the ground before getting pissed at how weak she was. At the time, Homura had just gotten to Kazehana's usual drinking spot and asked why she didn't drink at home. Kazehana said she needed to get away from a certain someone's Riz game and asked if Homura had found an ashikabi yet, but Homura swore never to get attached to anyone. Back at the boarding house, Minato had just gotten into the bath and slept off right before Musubi came in with an idea. After a dream where something terrible happened to the girls, he woke up terrified and saw Musubi's full plot in the bath. He immediately tried to hide his brick and told her someone would get the wrong idea if they saw them together like that. Just then, Tsukiyomi came in with Q and attacked both of them while Matsu was watching as usual and stepped out to join the fun, unaware that Benitsubasa had snuck in to watch them so she could cook up a plan for Musubi. The next day, Kazehana woke up with a hangover as usual and wobbled across the hallway until she saw Minato sleeping. She got closer to stare at his face, and it caused her snail to drip. So she tried to sneak a kiss, but her hair woke him up. Moments later, she managed to get her urges under control and asked about his father. Minato said his father was alive, but his mom had never said anything about him, so he knew very little. He then asked Kazehana if she was planning to sit out the Sekirai project because she was still without an ashikabi, and she said something about once having feelings for someone. That person rejected her, and she had since been without a partner because she only wanted to pair up with someone she liked. So she asked if he wanted to be her ashikabi, but he was too dumbfounded to give her a response. During breakfast later that morning, he kept thinking about her question until Ku shoved some food into his mouth. Tsukiyomi was boiling over because she had still not been able to beat Musubi at their grocery shopping races and swore to claim her victory soon, but Yuzume told her to consider another type of competition because her milkers were too heavy for running. Matsu then told her to save her anger for other reasons, and Minato asked if there was something important they should know about. She then told them about the lovebirds that got attacked by Benitsubasa and blamed their optimism on the hope spread by Kuno and Shiki's successful escape from the city. No one else had been successful since then, and it was slowly causing a rise in clashes between duos, but Tsukiyomi declared that labeling every other Sekirai as an enemy had always been at the top of her bucket list. Uzume immediately got up to leave, and Matsu told the rest of them to be careful when going out. She had heard rumors of a demon ashikabi and her mutated Santa Claus Sekirai, who were actually just Yukari and Shai. Despite squashing every pair of dingleberries they had found, the pair still had no idea where Ku was, so Yukari told him to cheer up right before Minato called to check up on her. After telling him that she missed juicing Musubi's milkers, Yukari asked if she could come see him at the boarding house, but then Tsukiyomi and Musubi started arguing with their melons over who would get to eat dinner beside him. Seeing that made him realize that Yukari would likely lose all respect for him if she found out, so he suggested meeting up for dinner instead, and she agreed. After hanging up the phone, the girls demanded to know who he was talking to, so he told them, and Musubi started reminiscing on the day she met Yukari, while Tsukiyomi got upset and left. Moments later, Kazehana got started on her second bottle and saw her standing on the roof, so she asked if she wanted to share the bottle, but Tsukiyomi refused because she didn't have a spare liver stashed away. Kazehana told her about the rejection from her first love and said it was what led her to discover the pleasures of alcohol. Tsukiyomi then asked if the rejection was why she had still not been waned, and she said she had still not found anyone good enough to match her freak. Tsukiyomi said she once had a similar mindset, although hers was mostly just pure hatred for the male species, but that was until Minato changed her mind. Kazehana started teasing her about it, so Tsukiyomi told her to get a life and left. Inside the dorm at the time, Minato had just told Miya about his plans to eat out with Yukari, so she wouldn't bother making him dinner, and she told him to be safe. Tsukiyomi also had the same idea and decided to escort him, despite his pleas for her not to worry. She also suggested getting introduced to Yukari as his one true wife, but he said it might not be a good idea and got her pissed off. While she was yelling about being introduced to Yukari, Benitsubasa was coming up with a new strategy because she still couldn't take on Tsukiyomi on her own. She felt better knowing Kazehana was with her, but the mummified loner was upset about missing the latest Annie Ender video and suggested a proper fight instead of trying to kidnap Minato. The memories of the disrespectful beating they took on the bridge that night was still etched deep into Benitsubasa's soul, so she refused to go with any other plan. Meanwhile, Matsu was in her room trying to stay updated on the happenings across the different zones of the city, but Kazehana interrupted to ask if she had any sake stashed away. She didn't have any regular bottles lying around and gave her a whole bottle of ethanol instead, with the hopes that the concentration would stop Kazehana's obsessive drinking. By then, Tsukiyomi was still arguing with Minato over the Yukari thing, but then she sensed an attack and pulled him away to block Kazehana. She felt good knowing that her decision to guard him paid off and got ready to take Kazehana down, but her excitement stopped her from sensing Benitsubasa, who then pulled Minato aside and knocked him out. After taking the fight to the rooftops, Tsukiyomi used her water abilities to knock Kazehana down and got ready to finish her off, but then Kazehana suddenly backed off, and she remembered that they used a similar tactic to distract her on the bridge. By then, Minato had been tied up in a distillery and woke up right before Benitsubasa used his phone to call the boarding house. Who answered the phone, so Benitsubasa told her to get the girl with mega melons, but that became a problem because all the girls in the boarding house had massive milkers, who took too long to answer, causing Benitsubasa to lose her cool, but her yelling started to hurt Ku's eardrums, so she hung up the phone. Kazehana was enjoying every sip of the ethanol while coming down the stairs with Matsu, and they both taught Ku how to handle a phone call. She waited for Benitsubasa to call back, but Kazehana took the call before she could get it. Benitsubasa started yelling again, so Kazehana hung up the phone, and she decided to use Minato to get their attention instead. Matsu answered the next call and heard his voice before Benitsubasa took over to ask for Musubi, but then he slammed the phone away and crushed it so they wouldn't end up sacrificing themselves for him. Matsu immediately went to track the phone, and Kazehana hung back to tell Miya about it before heading out. Meanwhile, Benitsubasa started ranting about the hatred she had for Yume, so Minato used the opportunity to make a run for it. By then, Kazehana was already jumping across rooftops and headed straight for the distillery because she had heard something similar over the phone. Moments later, Benitsubasa cornered Minato and got ready to take him out, but Kazehana dropped in and freed him before grabbing a bottle of the finest sake she could find. Benitsubasa charged in for the attack, but Kazehana used her wind abilities to push her away. Minato tried to help, but Kazehana showed up and held him back. While Yukari was waiting for Minato with Shi, Tsukiyomi was scouring the city trying to find him, and Matsu was doing the same by trying to hack into an MBI satellite. Back in the distillery, Benitsubasa was trying to figure out who Kazehana was and how she was connected to Minato, but before she could say anything, Minato claimed to have no idea who she was and told them to let her go. Benitsubasa got tired of hearing his voice and told Kazehana to carve out his tongue, but she remembered that her favorite show was on again and paused. Giving him an opening he used to push her into cartons of sake bottles and run off. By then, Tsukiyomi had still not come close to finding him, but she saw Musubi on the way home from grocery shopping and went to tell her what happened. Several minutes later, Matsu got Minato's location from the satellite, and Tsukiyomi got back with Musubi, so she told them where the distillery was and tried to come up with a plan. Tsukiyomi thought a plan would take too long, so she stormed out with Musubi, and Matsu tried to call them back. But then Maya told her not to worry about Minato because a certain alcoholic was likely going to save him. Back at the distillery, Kazehana had just gotten out of the cartons of sake and couldn't see straight anymore, causing her to poke her mummified skull right before Kazehana blasted her away and did the same to Benitsubasa. The humiliation caused Kazehana to get pissed, but her brain was still clogged by alcohol, and she ended up taking the anger out on herself again. While Kazehana was powering up to finish them off, Tsukiyomi was racing to get to the distillery and Musubi was struggling to keep up. Kazehana was still dodging Benitsubasa's attacks like they were having a sparring match, but Kazehana managed to get close enough to rip off a part of her dress. Before Benitsubasa could finish running her mouth again, Kazehana suggested getting implants, and she saw that her mini melons had been ripped open during the fight. She then realized that Minato had also seen her flatboard chest and charged in to finish him off, but Kazehana blocked her attack. Haihani also charged in, but Kazehana was too busy holding Benitsubasa back and got her back sliced open before getting kicked away like a brand new soccer ball. Minato immediately went to support her, but his Riz game scrambled her mind, so he had to remind her of the life and death situation they were in. Just as they got back up, Benitsubasa made the metal beams in the distillery crash into them, but Minato pushed Kazehana away at the last moment. As the beams started to crush him, Benitsubasa reminded them that he would have been safe if they had just brought Musubi like she asked, but Minato said he didn't want to risk her life again like what happened on the bridge that night. Hearing that made Kazehana fall deeper in love with him, so she blew the beams away and pushed him down for a steamy kiss. At that moment, Kagari had just woken up and met Mia, who had just sensed what happened to Kazehana, and told Kagari that she was the only one left before heading back inside to make dinner. By then, Kazehana had just gotten her wings and felt Minato's love surging through her body. Once it was completed, she powered up and blasted them out through the roof just as Tsukiyomi and Musubi showed up. Kazehana was trying to profess her newfound love to Minato when Tsukiyomi drenched them in water and took him outside to yell in his face, while Musubi was just excited to see that he still had game. When Kazehana started grabbing him again, Tsukiyomi threatened to drown them, but Kazehana got ready to counter. Minato tried to stop them, but he got dizzy and passed out in Kazehana's melons right before Takami pulled up. By sundown, Yukari was still waiting with Shi and started getting worried, but then she got a call from her mom telling her that Minato had a last-minute errand to run. Takami got off a call moments later and saw Kazehana watching her from a lamppost, so she swore that she wasn't looking for any trouble, and Kazehana left. Meanwhile, a Sekirei was on a roof trying to get away from Karasuba, but she was too slow and got stabbed right through the chest. She then reminisced on the day she and Yume were sent out to save Musubi from the private company that stole her away. Moments later, Minato woke up and was confused about where they were, so the girls told him it was a hospital directly run by the MBI. While they were talking, they heard someone with a familiar voice walk in, and that person turned out to be Takami, who was actually his mom. After she checked on him, the girls watched them catching up and still couldn't believe that she was his mom. She then reminded him of the pharma company she claimed to have been working for, and said it was a lie to cover up her real job at the MBI. Musubi then said something about once getting adjusted by Takami, but before he could ask for an explanation, she left to go clean out the water bowl and met Karasuba in the hallway. While they went up to the roof for a chat, Minato told Takemi about what happened to Musubi that night on the bridge, and that gave her a lot to think about. She then asked Tsukiyomi why she had not referred to her as mother yet, and Tsukiyomi immediately apologized for the disrespect. She tried addressing Takami properly, but Takami stopped her and said it wasn't that deep, causing Tsukiyomi to crash out while Minato struggled to hold her back. Takami was talking about how Musubi had a complicated past when one of the OG men in black spawned from thin air to tell her about a stage 4 Sekirei attack. After she left to take care of it, Tsukiyomi told Minato about the 5 stages used to classify the damage done to Sekireis during fights, and said a stage 4 attack meant the unlucky Sekirei was 1 stage away from the afterlife. Back on the roof, Karasuba suddenly pushed Musubi back against a wall and told her to get a lot stronger than Yume while pressing her sword into her melons. The next day, Ku welcomed Minato back with a hug, and Mia decided to cook up a buffet to celebrate his safe return. After Musubi showed up with Uzume, he asked if they had seen Kazehana right before she came out in a plotful apron that reopened his head injuries. Before she could melt away what was left of his brain, Mia interrupted with a metal spoon to the noggin and told Kazehana to keep her bot behavior away from the boarding house. Moments later, Uzume got on the phone with her bosses regarding something connected to Chio, but Kazehana came in to find another costume, so she hung up. She then noticed the Sekirei insignia on her back and got closer with a plan to neutralize her by reciting the ritual. Meanwhile, Kagari was up on the roof battling with her emotions. Just as Uzume got closer to perform the ritual, Kazehana started asking about the special someone she got all the costumes for. Uzume then told her how kind Chio was and said Kazehana could keep all the costumes because she had to do something that would take an unusually long time to complete. Moments later, Kazehana went to show Minato and the girls a new outfit, but they got tired of seeing her plot and started asking for Uzume. He went looking and met her at the door, and she apologized for bailing on the party, but he said it was cool if she had other plans and told her to make it back safely. Once she was out of the building, the sounds of their voices having so much fun started to do a number on her, and Mia noticed. She tried talking to her, but Uzume ran off. Kagari had been watching from the window, but then Minato came in to tell her about the party. She promised to be out in a few minutes, so he left, and she took a second to figure out why he had an effect on her emotional state. Minutes later, Tsukiyomi tried to show them a water trick, but Minato stopped her to avoid getting a beating from Mia. While they all enjoyed watching him, Kagari was starting to lose her temper as she watched him being so happy with them until he asked if she was okay. She thanked him for inviting her and got up to leave, but he asked why she had barely eaten anything. He had also noticed that she spent most of her time indoors and asked if she was okay, but she suddenly got upset and said a guy had no right to worry about her. After seeing the surprised look on their faces, she told him not to worry and went in to continue fighting her feelings. She eventually drifted off into a dream where Minaka said her unstable powers could only be understood once she let her emotions take over. After the party, Minato started cleaning up with Musubi and asked if Kagari hated him, but she said Kagari's hatred was actually love. Just before sundown, he finished up the laundry and sat with Musubi and Q on the patio to talk about how crazy life had been since they first met. Then he remembered that he was supposed to take an exam for college and started freaking out because he had missed the deadline for an important test. Matsu was just on her way out when she saw him breaking down, remembered the special test she made, and gave it to him. After she went back inside, Kazehana got back and won against Tsukiyomi again. Minato got confused by the new matchup and asked Musubi, who then told him that they were competing over who would get to race her. Meanwhile, Kagari had just gotten into the bath to cool off her milkers, but Minaka was still in her head, causing her to get frustrated. She then thought about the day Takami and a mop-haired scientist explained that she was basically a failed trans experiment that would settle into a specific body type when someone became her ashikabi. The fact that her entire state of being dependent on some random guy made her even more pissed than before, so she tried to calm herself, but the girls came into the dressing room and started arguing, causing her to get pissed again. When they all came in with their large milk jugs dangling about, her anger turned to shock, and she reminded them that she was a guy since they had still only seen her in her masculine body. They said it didn't matter, and Musubi even offered to wash her back, but she refused, so they went to wash each other's backs instead. By then, Minato had just finished Matsu's test, so she looked through it and realized what the problem was. She said the test was 2 times more difficult than the university entrance exams, but he still passed it. He thought it was good news, but she got pissed and said his 2 failed attempts to get in were because he didn't have any self-confidence. After she told him to start believing in himself, he got a text that surprised him. Meanwhile, Yukari was interrogating a random ashikabi and popped his dingleberries for not having any answers. Just as she got the same text, Mikogami also got it and sent Akitsu on a mission. While every other ashikabi in the area got theirs, Seo was too busy drowning in Ikari's melons until she zapped him. The text was a message from Minaka informing all the ashikabis about one last sekirei that had still not been waged. Matsu already knew that it was his way of stirring up trouble in Taito and told Minato that he had to wing the last sekirei before anybody else could find her. He said he didn't even know who she was, and Matsu almost spilled the beans but stopped herself and immediately went back to her room, who then told Minato that the last sekirei was probably just as lonely as she was before he found her and begged him to help, so he promised to do his best. At the time, the others were in the bath asking Kazehana about her first love, and Kagari got tired of the gossip, so she got out of the bath and got dizzy on her way out. Minato saw her about to fall and tried to support her chest, but he got shocked when he felt her melons instead. She started to heat up, so he tried to get help, but she pulled him down and reached in for a kiss. By then, Tsukiyomi and Musubi were struggling to believe that Kazehana's first love was Minaka, who was trying to take in the view and got his skull cracked by Takami.
What'd I do?
She asked why he sent the text, so he said the city needed some spice to make things a little interesting. Just then, Kagari got her senses back and punched Minato into flight mode, but the realization that he might be the one causing her emotions to go AWOL made her decide to finish him off. After getting over him and activating her flame, she stared into his eyes and froze until Tsukiyomi cooled her off with some water. She then apologized for losing her temper and told Minato to stop manhandling every pair of melons he came across. While Minato struggled to explain his actions to the girls, Kagari saw Moya by the door and said she was going to end Minaka for creating the Sekirei game. Moments later, Kazehana got out of the bath and asked why Tsukiyomi was arguing with Minato, so Musubi told her that he also had a thing for Magnum sausages. Before he could explain himself, Moya threatened to cut off the tip of their melons, so they all ran off to get dressed. Minato struggled to understand why Kagari had milk jugs because they all still thought she was a guy, but he was at least sure of the fact that she was a sekirei. At the time, Kagari was trying to count how many times Takami called her, but then she called again and told Kagari not to leave the boarding house. Takami was trying to tell her why when Minato knocked at her door to tell her about the message he received from Minaka. Kagari thought he wanted to be the one to kiss her and asked if he was just trying to add her to the harem, but Minato said he was just worried about her. Her emotions started to rise, but she fought back and told him to keep his sympathy to himself before getting dressed and telling Takami about her plan to end Minaka. Minato kept knocking until he pushed the door open, but she was already gone by then and had left her phone on the bed. After Yukari and Shai read the message, they thought the unwinged Sekirai was Q and set out to find her. Meanwhile, Minato had just gotten his eardrums destroyed by Takami, who then told him that Kagari was in danger. In the dressing room, Tsukiyomi told the girls that Kagari's flame reminded her of Homura and described the first time they met while Musubi helped her get dressed. As she described his outfit, Musubi started to remember something, and Kazehana tried to sneak out. Then Musubi said she had once met Homura and mistook him for Kagari because they looked the same from behind. Tsukiyomi then thought about what she said and compared her memories of him to what she saw moments ago, causing her to freak out as her waterlogged brain cells finally caught up to reality. By then, Takami had given Minato the full rundown of Kagari's secret identity as Homura and said he had to stop her because she was likely going to lose herself to her unstable powers. The next moment, Tsukiyomi barged in with the others and started interrogating Minato because she thought he was secretly letting Kagari give him the tip. Matsu broke off the argument and took them out to the table to explain that even if Kagari managed to get past all the other Ashikabis, she would have to go through the disciplinary squad to reach Minaka. Tsukiyomi then asked Minato about what happened with Kagari, and he said it looked like the same reaction they all had before becoming his Sekiris. The thought of adding another girl to the harem was a tough one to stomach, but Tsukiyomi swallowed her jealousy and gave him permission to take Kagari as well. The rest of them had no issues with that idea, so he reminded them that Kagari tried to barbecue him for touching her melons. Tsukiyomi then reminded him that she also tried to clap him before they kissed and told him to stop whining like a little bitch. After he took a moment to pick up the shards of his dignity, Ku begged him to save Kagari. He remembered how much she hated receiving sympathy and asked Tsukiyomi if she wanted him to save her out of pity. Tsukiyomi then explained that her true intention was to make Kagari pay for all the time she made her feel like a wannabe feminist who forgot about the cause after tasting Minato's glizzy. Minato then gave a speech about feelings and an unnecessary amount of corny quotes before agreeing to go save Kagari with his lips. Tsukiyomi told him to stop being so cheesy all the time, but the others immediately smothered him and pissed her off. Matsu then showed them the second part of a transmitter she put in Kagari's clothes so they could start tracking her. Meanwhile, Kagari was on her way to the MBI building, but Akitsu showed up to make her join Mikogami's harem, and they both started trying to clap each other while Mikogami watched with Matsu. Moments later, Naruto started heading out with the others, but Miya stopped him and told him to drag Kagari back by a leash because she had still not paid her rent. After Musubi grabbed his arm and took off with the others, Seo showed up with the twins and said he was worried about them, but the girls told Matsu that he really just wanted to steal some food. Miya then expressed her sadness over not knowing what Kagari had been going through and said she would have clapped Minaka on her own as she knew. But Seo said such violence would be too much for one city. Matsu then pulled the tracker out of her melons and said she believed that Minato would change the fate of every Sekirai. Miya said she wasn't so sure about that because he had still not learned to handle the girls in his harem, and Seo also thought that he was much too childish to use their plots to its full potential. Matsu started heading back inside and said she was sure of Minato's potential before the twins zapped Seo for thinking about other sets of melons. By then, Kagari and Akitsu's fight had gotten a lot more intense, but her flames stopped protecting her from Akitsu's icicles, so she took a minute to recover and started asking Akitsu how she had an ashikabi. Kagari knew that the insignia on her forehead meant she was a rare Sekirai with unbelievable power that could not be winged, so she kept asking how she ended up with Mikogami, but Akitsu refused to say a word. Kagari then asked why she came out to fight without panties, and Matsu also asked Mikogami if his plan was to watch her rice cakes in action, but he claimed innocence. Just as Akitsu felt the wind in her fish lips and admitted to forgetting her undies, Yuzume showed up and told Kagari to forget the Yuzume she was back in the boarding house. She wrapped Kagari up and tried to attack, but she burned through the wraps, and Akitsu attacked with her icicles. She told Yuzume to stay away because Mikogami had dibs on Kagari, so they both started fighting over her while she started started losing control over her powers. Minato was still getting dragged along by Musubi when Matsu called to tell him that she was picking up a lot of Sekiris closing in on Kagari's location. While Akitsu and Yuzume kept fighting, Kagari tried to continue heading for the MBI building, but her powers started to reach a dangerously high level. At the time, Yukari was getting hyped to find the last unwinged Sekirei, and Shai told her to consider the possibility that it might not even be Ku. She still thought it would be best if they got there first to save whoever she was from a creepy Ashikabi. Meanwhile, Uzume was still struggling to stop Akitsu, while Kagari was getting weakened by her own flames. Mikogami got tired of watching the fight and told Matsu to finish Uzume off, but then Kakizaki revealed himself and offered to let them get home safe in exchange for Kagari. Mikogami got pissed and told Matsu to stop him first, but Matsu knew it wasn't going to be that simple because he could sense the other Sekireis gathering around them. Mikogami thought he needed a little motivation and tried to kiss him, but Matsu rejected his underdeveloped lips and used his sword to earthbend before taking off with him. He then told Akitsu to retreat because Kagari was a lost cause, but she hung back to tell her why she became Mikogami's Sekirei. Uzume thought she wanted to clap Kagari and attacked, but Akitsu easily dodged and commended her determination before telling Kagari that Sekiris were the ones who chose their Ashikabis, not the other way around. After saying she was jealous of the fact that Kagari could still be winged, she took off and Yuzume got ready to finish what she started. Shai was trying to catch up to Yukari, but she nearly got run over by a biker named Nishi. Before she could roast him, her knee scrape started to hurt, so he tried to clean it up with his saliva and got a mouthful of her boot. Back on the roof, Uzume told Kagari to surrender peacefully so things wouldn't have to get ugly, but all that did was remind her of her dedication to protect Sekireis and caused her flames to pour out. Kakizaki had just gotten to the roof by then and said Kagari might be too unstable for their group. Kagari then said she would never let herself get taken by any of the Ashikabis and started trying to burn herself up. As the flames started to overpower her, she thought about the girls and thought she was finally going to become Thanksgiving turkey. But she got put out by Tsukiyumi, who was pissed that she tried to clap herself without asking for permission. After the rest of them crashed in, Minato tried to check on her, but she told him to keep his sympathy to himself. Musubi then told her that they wanted to collect the rent from Mia, and Kazehana said it wouldn't be nice if she actually succeeded in turning Minaka to burnt toast. Kakizaki didn't like the idea of losing Kagari to Minato's harem, so he told Katsuragi and Oriya to take Kagari by any means necessary. Tsukiyumi tried to take on Uzume, but Kazehana called dibs right before Oriya's floating saws attacked Tsukiyumi. She immediately powered up to teach her a lesson or two, and Musubi also summoned her inner Jake Paul to take on Katsuragi. While Minato was trying to help Kagari up, Kakizaki tried to figure out why such a wimp had so many girls, but then Ku used her plant powers to snatch him up. Minato told Kagari that they all just wanted to help out and asked if she would let him become her Ashikabi, but she accused him of just wanting her powers like all the others. She then popped out her melons to show him how unstable she was and said she would rather burn because her existence was already meaningless. Just as she let out her flames, he grabbed her and refused to let go despite the risk of becoming charred steak. He said she was wrong for thinking she was worthless and reminded her of the things she had done to shake the lives of all the others. She kept trying to push him away so he wouldn't burn up, but then he kissed her and Mia joined Matsu to watch the fiery moment. After her wings blew out, she felt his love surging through every inch of her plot and remembered when Taito told her that there would be someone capable of showing her what love meant. Minato immediately dropped, so she went to help him up, and he apologized for kissing her without permission. She started teasing him about it, and they both got drenched by Tsukiyumi, who had clearly forgotten that it was her idea and started going off the deep end. After Katsuragi knocked Musubi around like a soccer ball, she also got pissed off and summoned the dark bear hidden deep inside her core. While Tsukiyumi summoned an 8-headed water serpent that chased after Oriya, she tried to attack with her saw, but it ended up freeing Kakizaki, who immediately told them to retreat. By then, Uzume had realized that Kazehana was not the average Sekirei and tried to use her most powerful attack, but Oriya told her to save it for another fight, so she stopped, and they all took off. Tsukiyumi got pissed because she had still not taken her anger out on anyone, but Musubi had knocked out Katsuragi and watched over her until an MBI med chopper entered their airspace. Kagari then accepted her new fate as Minato's latest bitch, and Matsu thought the worst was over, but Mia said the real battle had just begun because all the Sekireis had finally gotten their wings. Moments later, Yukari got to the rooftop with Shei, but they were too late, and Yukari blamed it all on Nishi. Just before they got there, Minato asked Kagari about her plan to take out Manaka and told her to get her wounds treated at the boarding house before trying again. Hearing him sound so concerned tugged at her heartstrings, so she agreed to head back with him and crushed his palm because she had still not fully accepted the fact that he owned her. The girls then asked if they were ready to head back, but Kagari's wounds started to affect her again, and she passed out in Minato's arms. When she woke up at the boarding house, Mia said it had been 2 days since they brought her back from the rooftop. Kagari tried to explain the reason behind her decision, but Mia said it didn't matter as long as she was safe. She then told her that Minato had been watching over her the entire time and stepped out as soon as he woke up. Kagari asked for his help with the bandages, so he went to get a new wrap, but then she started taking off the ones covering her melons, and he freaked. She told him there was no point being so formal with each other and reminded him of the fact that her body could change depending on what he wanted. She expected him to make a final decision about the size and shape of her plots, but he turned her away to apply some ointment and said she could be whoever she wanted to be. He then left to give her some space and saw the girls sleeping outside, so he grabbed Q and told Musubi about Kagari's condition. Tsukiyomi woke up and threatened to clap him if he did anything cultured to Kagari, and Matsu also came out to ask for all the juicy details, but she got roasted by Kagari. Tsukiyomi then asked why Matsu had always been so supportive of Minato getting more girls for the Sekirei game. Minato also said he didn't like how useless he felt because he didn't know much about the game and begged her to spill everything, so she agreed to tell them the whole truth. Meanwhile, Kazehana was at the dinner table with Mia, talking about Uzume's recent choices and the path it would lead her on, but Mia promised to welcome her back if she ever decided to return. In Matsu's room, she reminded Minato of the dangers of knowing everything concerning the Sekirei game, and he said he was ready to take on the risks, but his shivering hand told a different story. After Musubi grabbed it and promised to always keep him safe, Tsukiyomi and Ku also swore to protect him, but Matsu told them to drop the mushy axe so she could spill the beans. 2 years ago, 2 students found a mysterious island out in the oceans, and after discovering the remains of a spaceship on it, they did some digging and stumbled across futuristic tech they called over-technology. While Matsu explained the spaceship in more detail, Muya was eavesdropping on their conversation with Kazehana, and Kagari also joined in. Kazehana was sure that Matsu would leave some of the darker secrets untouched, but Mia was already coming up with a plan to make them all homeless if she revealed too much. Back in Matsu's room, she told them how Manaka established the MBI with the tech he found and discovered 108 sleeping life forms that he called Sekiris. Of the 108 Sekiris, 1 was a fully developed adult, while 8 were in an embryonic state, and the rest were found as eggs. She said the fully developed and embryonic ones were single-digit Sekiris that had been altered a lot more than the others. While she was explaining the adjustments done to some Sekiris, Musubi and Ku were getting on Tsukiyomi's nerves, but then she heard Matsu talking about the editors responsible for adjusting Sekiris and remembered her trauma. Matsu explained that some editors caused a lot of trauma to the Sekiris they worked on, and one of them was Taito, Mia's husband, who had also worked on the adult Sekirei, who Matsu claimed was not really a Sekirei to begin with. With the basics covered, she then told them about the invasion of the island that happened when Manaka's attempt to keep it hidden failed. The invasion led to the creation of the first disciplinary squad that was specially adjusted by Taito to possess powers far above the regular Sekiris. Matsu tried to continue with the story, but Minato and the girls were in shock from the realization that she was among the first disciplinary squad. After saying it was no big deal, she told them about the petty squabbles they all had amongst themselves on that day until Mia showed up and took charge as their leader. Matsu easily hacked into a bunch of satellites to get all the information she could on the invading army, and the rest of them easily used their powers to decimate the entire invasion. Minaka met Taito on an edge to ask if he was proud of their victory, but Taito felt like they had become even worse than the version of humanity they were trying to fix. Minaka saw no problem with the destruction and blamed the rest of the world for disrespecting the miracle he had discovered. While Maya eagerly listened to the rest of the story, Kagari hid behind the door and said she didn't expect their occasionally murderous housekeeper to actually be the leader of the first disciplinary squad. After Minato and the girls survived the shock of Matsu's identity, he asked why she left, so she told him the whole thing became too much and caused her to abandon the organization for a life on the run. Kagari also asked Kazehana why she left, so she told her how Manaka tossed her rice cakes to the curb and sent her on an alcohol-fueled search for love. Matsu then told Minato and the girls that Kagari getting winged was the last step to kickstart Minaka's plan for a Sekirei battle royale. She also told them to consider the possibility of having to fight against Uzume because she had problems that could lead to them being made to stand against her. Just then, Minato and every other ashikabi in the city got a message from Manaka stating that all sekiris with weak ashikabis that were planning to avoid the game would cease to function. While Manaka was getting hyped up to finally see some action, Takemi was concerned about Minato and hoped the incident at the bridge had given him enough experience to handle himself. Back in Matsu's room, they felt confident knowing that the new policy didn't affect them since Musubi already had 2 official wins, but she still didn't like the idea of Manaka forcing weak ashikabis to separate from their sekirais for not wanting to fight. Tsukiyomi, on the other hand, thought the weak ashikabis didn't deserve to have sekirais if they were not willing to fight for their partners, and Matsu supported her because the game was built specifically to figure out which of them was strong enough to protect the love they had found. At the time, Matsu was talking to Mikogami about the policy and thought they had to be careful of desperate groups that would consider attacking them for an easy win. But Mikogami thought that would only make things interesting. Yukari and Shei had also gotten the message and knew that they had to get a win soon because all their interrogations had only been to get more information on Ku's location. Seo's girls were in the bath, asking if he had any plans to get them out of trouble with Nanaka, but he was more concerned about the food he left in the microwave and got zapped. Nishi was also with his girls and thought it would be fun to finally get into a fight, so they left to start planning. Kakizaki had also just briefed Higa on the message and got sent to deliver the message to Uzume. On the way back from shopping that evening, Minato expressed his concerns over the new policy to Musubi, but she told him not to worry because one of them would always go out with him while Matsu would be tracking him with her satellites. Just then, she called to tell him about 2 people following close behind them, and he whispered it to Musubi so she would act normal, but she was too slow to understand what he meant and called out to the people following them. Yoichi and Nanoha then came out and said they needed his help getting out of the city because they knew about what happened with Shigi and Kuno, while Matsu was telling Kagari not to worry about it since the duo would have attacked already if they were hostile. Tsukiyomi was on the roof with Ku trying to come up with a new competition that would help her win against Musubi. Minato was surprised by the fact that Yoichi knew who he was, so Yoichi explained that they had first tried getting help from Seo and got turned down. He also said Minato was famous across the city for being the only ashikabi to go toe-to-toe with the disciplinary squad and survive. Minato and Musubi started having second thoughts about them when Yoichi started rambling on about how weak Shigi and Kuno were. He thought their success in escaping despite being weak meant he could also succeed, but Minato refused to help them for disrespecting Shigi, who he said was really strong for going through hell just to get Kuno to safety. Just then, MBI choppers started closing on their location, so Yoichi ran off with Nanoha and a couple of tanks chased after them. The next moment, Karasuba dropped by to say hi to Musubi and noticed her core glowing, so she reminded her of their promise to face off against each other and went to handle business. Moments later, they got back, and he tried to help Musubi get the stuff they bought through the door, but Tsukiyomi and Ku pounced on him to ask why they took so long to get back. Afterwards, they went to Matsu's room to talk about what happened, and the girls all agreed on the fact that weak ashikabis like Yoichi were better off learning to fight instead of seeking help from other ashikabis. He then asked if they knew what the MBI had planned for them, and Matsu said Karasuba had likely already put Nanoha on ice. She then pulled up the company's current record and saw that Yoichi had been arrested, while Nanoha had already been rendered unable to function. Matsu said the only one who would be able to stand against Karasuba was the #1 Sekirei, so he asked who that person was, but Kagari and Kazehana told him to stop asking questions about it. Just then, Mia showed up to tell them dinner was ready and nearly gave Matsu a heart attack. After he left with Musubi, Tsukiyomi, and Ku, the girls begged for Mia's forgiveness, but she told them not to worry because she had ditched her former ways. Sometime after they were found on the island, she finished getting her plot examined by Taito and watched him threaten an innocent civilian's life over the phone before their love story started. Later on, Tsukiyomi finally won against the girls in a game of Uno, but she forgot to say the right words and got her victory revoked before Ku stole the win. Mia saw Minato watching them and asked about it, so Tsukiyomi explained that it was an idea Q came up with to give her a shot at finally winning dinner with Minato. After threatening to grill Minato's glizzy if he were to try anything PG-rated, Moya left them to enjoy the game, but Tsukiyomi started getting furious from taking so many losses. They all couldn't believe how good Ku was at the game and asked if she had a teacher, so she told them that it was all thanks to Uzume and got sad because it had been days since they last saw her. Kazehana then suggested having the winner go on a date with Minato, but he tried to vote against it, so she asked if he would prefer having them strip for him instead. He said that would be too much for his virgin mind, so she jiggled her wagon and promised to teach him the ways of men after winning. The next day, Ku won the date with Minato, and Tsukiyomi threatened to end him if he got back a second later than his curfew. Moments later, Kagari met Kazehana at the patio to chat, but Matsu crashed the girl talk to tell them that Yuzume's takedowns were all unregistered, which meant she was also among the Sekirays at risk of getting put on ice. At the time, she had just taken Chio out to get her first taste of sunlight in a long while, but then she saw Kakizaki and made up an excuse to go see him. Meanwhile, Ku was thanking Minato for getting her a stuffed animal on their date, and he told her it wasn't a big deal before she ran off with the cat. Kakizaki wanted to show Yuzume the message from Minaka because Chio didn't have a phone to receive it. He then told her that Higa had made preparations to save her from Karasuba's blade, but the catch was that she had to take Minato out. By then, Minato was still looking for Q and got close to the hospital right before the cat led Q to Chiho. Uzume had just gotten back outside with a blanket and thought about the deal she made with Kakizaki to keep protecting Chiho. By then, she was petting the cat with Ku, but it ran off, and that caused Ku to notice how frail Chio actually looked, so she asked about it. After Chio told her about the sickness and her desire to freely walk again one day, Ku grabbed her hand to say something, but then she heard Minato calling out to her, so she said goodbye to Chiho and ran without her doll right before Uzume got to her. Minato had gotten into the hospital by then and saw a couple leaving, but then the girl collapsed. He went to help and saw that she was carrying the Pro Max version of Thor's hammer. The next moment, he took a boot to the face from Junichi, who then told him to mind his business and slapped Yashima around for being lazy. Minato told him to stop hitting her and got ready for a fight, but Yashima told him not to interfere in their problems and dragged the hammer along as she followed her toxic Ashikabi. Just then, Hu found Minato and tried to tell him about Chiho, but then she realized that she left the stuffed animal behind and got sad. He tried to find it, but Chiho had gone back inside by then, so he promised to bring her back the next day because visiting hours were over. Uzume was by the nurse's station with Chiho and told her she also couldn't find Q, so Chio promised to keep it safe and asked Uzume if she was feeling sad. Uzume said it was nothing to worry about, but Chio reminded her that she could sense her emotional state and knew when she was faking a smile. Hearing that made Uzume feel warm and fuzzy inside, so she started a very intense PDA session. Meanwhile, Yukari was strolling with Shi after making him cross-dress for his safety, but Junichi could tell that he was a Sekirei and started cooking up a plan with Yashima. In the boarding house, Tsukiyomi was getting worried about Minato and kept pacing across the room, so Kazehana said they probably just lost track of time during their date. That immediately flooded Tsukiyomi's mind with fantasies about the day they had spent together and made her jealous, so she went out to find them. At the time, Yukari had just told Shi to wait by a bench in the park so she could go pee, but then Junichi showed up and told Yashima to attack him. Tsukiyomi was walking close to the park when she heard the sound of Yashima's first attack and went to watch the fight. Shi kept dodging the attacks, so Junichi stopped Yashima and started trying to beat some sense into her until Yukari got back. After soaking him in some water, Tsukiyomi scolded Shi for not taking the fight seriously, and Junichi used the opportunity to grab Yashima's melons for a kiss that unlocked her full powers. Once she powered up the hammer and charged in, Yukari told Shi to use his powers, so he activated a death skill that shattered Yashima's hammer and blew off her clothes. After her Sekirei mark vanished, Shi cried for her and tried to apologize, but Junichi started trying to strangle him, so Tsukiyomi dislocated his face while Yukari made sure Shi was okay. Junichi then pulled a knife to attack him again, but Tsukiyomi cut off the blade with her water skill, and Yukari popped a couple of arteries open with a punch that sent him twirling across the park. He tried to get back up, but she went into demon mode and powered up her boot for a nut-busting technique that left him squirming in pain. She then thanked Tsukiyomi for the help, and Shi told her that Tsukiyomi was also a Sekirei, but all Yukari could see at that point were her milkers, so she started begging for a squeeze, but Tsukiyomi ran away. While leaping across the rooftops, she kept thinking about Yukari's creepshow behavior until Minato called out to her. After meeting up and scolding him for taking so long to get back, she realized how lucky she was to have a regular Beta Ashikabi and stop nagging so much. That night, another Sekirei couple got their first victory and apologized to the Ashikabi that lost, but he didn't want their sympathy and kept crying over his girl. The next day, the girls started arguing about another contest to decide who would spend the day with Minato, so Kazehana suggested a titty tournament, and Matsu also had the same idea. They tried forcing Minato to join the debate, but he stepped out to give them space and joined Kagari on the patio. He then asked if it was okay for them to stay indoors and compare the size of their melons while other couples were risking it all for their love. He desperately wanted to do something about it, so Kagari told him to come up with a plan on his own and promised to stand by his side with the others. After she left, the girls settled on having a mud wrestling battle to decide. Meanwhile, Seho and his twins had just abandoned another shred of their dignity to beg Mia for food, but Chio was also worried about the fact that someone might try to attack Minato and the girls without realizing that Mia was arguably the strongest Sekirai in existence. After the girls got their plots covered in mud during the wrestling match, Minato got ready to head back to the hospital with Tsukiyomi and Musubi since they both won the match. Before they left, Matsu told Minato to be extra careful and claimed she was just making sure he was safe. But after they left, she immediately started tracking them. The moment she picked up a Sekirai following them, Minato turned off his phone because they had just gotten to the hospital. They were trying to ask about Chio at the counter when Ku spotted Uzume, who then took them all to meet Chio. Seeing her reminded Minato of the times Maya told him about Uzume's ashikabi and made him realize that she was the one Uzume kept all those costumes for. While Uzume pulled Tsukiyomi and Musubi aside to ask for a favor, Matsu was still trying to get a signal until Kagari reminded her of the no-phone policy at the hospital. She immediately realized what was about to happen and told them, so Kagari started heading out. She tried giving Kazehana a phone so she could reach out if things got out of hand, but Kazehana promised to take care of it on her own. By then, Ku was talking with Chio and Minato was trying to figure out where the girls went, but then he saw Kakizaki standing outside and left to go see what he was up to. He hid behind some bushes and eavesdropped on a conversation he was having with Higa about a fight between Uzume and the girls. At the time, Tsukiyomi and Musubi were getting tired of wondering what she wanted them to do for her until she showed up in her Sekirai form and challenged them to a duel. Years ago, Chio got dumped in the hospital by her relatives after a plane crash took her parents away forever. She quickly settled into her lonely life as a vegetable until the day she found Uzume sitting by a fence on the roof. At that moment, she was in her room telling Q how fortunate she was to have Uzume in her life after what happened to her parents. Meanwhile, Uzume had just told the girls that she had no other option for saving Chio and charged in. On that day in the past, she left the boarding house to get supplies for Mia, but after jumping across every roof in the city, she started thinking about her true purpose as a Sekirai. She had just gotten to that fence on the roof to eat when she felt her Sekirai mark activate right before Chio got closer and grabbed her because she thought Uzume was trying to kick the bucket. They both ended up falling off the roof, but Uzume activated her powers and saved Chio before getting closer to be sure that she was her ashikabi. Uzume's memory of that day was what gave her the strength to push through on her decision to fight the girls, so Musubi swore to give her all to the duel so they could honor her promise to fight for Chio. After they both clashed, Uzume stopped to ask Tsukiyomi why she wasn't joining in, and she said it was because of the one-on-one combat rule guiding official Sekirai duels. While they both continued exchanging punches, Minato ran across the hospital to get to them, while Matsu kept tracking Kazehana and Kagari from her room. Moments later, Musubi finally got the drop on Uzume and drew first blood, so she also decided to take things up a notch and wrapped Musubi up before vanishing for a surprise attack. Just then, Minato showed up and distracted them, causing Uzume to rip off Musubi's clothes before taking a brutal kick that pushed her back. Minato tried to stop them, but Tsukiyomi held him back and said it would be disrespectful for him to stop Uzume from doing what she had to do for Chio. Uzume then got ready to resume the fight, but she suddenly ran out of energy and dropped. After Musubi also collapsed with her cakes up in the wind, she dodged an attack from another Sekirai at the last moment, but Tsukiyomi was not as fast and got kicked away. After the plot-heavy chick with a busted hairline introduced herself as a Chia, Toyotama asked for Musubi's last words, but Tsukiyomi blasted her away and started fighting off a Chia. Toyotama tried to attack her as well, but Kagari finally showed up to stop her and Kazehana blew Chaya back, so Kakizaki called Higa to tell him the current situation and received an order to retreat. Once he gave the signal, Ichiya bounced and Toyotama tried to finish Musubi off, but Uzume jumped in at the last moment and took the hit. Musubi tried to chase after her, but Kazehana stopped her and took Uzume in her arms as her life force started to drain out. After they all took turns teasing her for being a highly cultured baddie, she made Minato promise to look after Chio, and he agreed while barely holding his tears back. Uzume then drifted off into a memory of the day she took Chio up to the roof and got the kiss that activated her Sekirai wings. She then let out one last stream of tears before her Sekirai mark completely disappeared, and at that moment, Chio felt her absence and started to cry while watching the MBI chopper pull up to take her away. Tsukiyomi spent the next day thinking up on the roof while Kagari found Kazehana struggling to drown her sorrows in countless bottles of sake. She was complaining about how insanely high her tolerance was when Mia showed up and surprisingly joined them for a drink before making them promise to always make it home and heading back inside. Minato was in his room at the time, seeing flashes of the times Ozume would barge in on him. He remembered telling Chio what happened after the fight and cluelessly watching as Musubi swore to win the Sekirei Battle Royale and reunite her with Ozume. He got tired of sitting around all day and went to meet Matsu, who also had the same idea, and took him in to tell him that Higa had the key to Chio's cure and was using it to blackmail Ozume. She had just moved Chio to a private hospital away from Higa's control, but Minato asked why she didn't just send her to the MBI hospital, so she reminded him that it was only for Ashikabis who still had functional Sekireis. Minato then said they had to find Higa and ask for Chio's cure, but Matsu had been waiting all day to hear those words and immediately went psycho on her computers. At that moment, Kekizaki and Kachu went to inform Higa of a cyber attack that was crashing their stock prices and the performance ratings of all their companies. Higa watched the meltdown with both of them and knew it was Minato's attempt to reach him, but once Matsu finished the attack, he got a call from Chio's hospital. When they got there, the nurse said her condition had gotten critical, and they still didn't have a cure, so he ran out in frustration and saw Higa waiting to get acquainted with a bouquet of flowers. After commending him on the cyber attack, Higa handed over the flowers with a data chip containing instructions for a treatment to help Chio. Moments later, they went out to a bench and Minato asked why he had been using Ozume, but Higa said she was the one who offered herself up in exchange for Chio's health. He then said the attack that caused her to cease functioning was not a part of his plan and caused Minato to get pissed, but Higa said he didn't care about his opinions. He reminded Minato that the whole Sekirei game had turned all their lives upside down because they never expected to be forced into a battle royale with alien baddies. Higa was especially pissed off by the fact that they were all being forced to risk their lives for Minaka's amusement, but he saved the talk for later and told Minato that the chip wouldn't be of much use to any regular hospital because the technology needed to pull it off had still not been created. After saying that only MBA had access to such technology, he wished Minato luck and sped off. Later that day, Minato called his mum to ask for her help with the treatment, but she refused to give him any handouts and told him to take care of it on his own. After the call, he called the girls out to talk about Chio's condition and asked for their help breaking into the MBI building. Just then, Ninaka hacked into their TV to tell Minato that he knew about his plan to save Chio with MBI tech. He offered to help Minato out on the condition that he had to make it all the way to the top of the MBI tower on his own and stop the transmission before Minato could ask any questions. While he started discussing what Minaka was likely cooking up with the girls, Takami had just gotten to the roof and realized that he had tapped into her call with Minato, so she attacked him, but the text broadcast he was typing had already been sent by then. At that moment, every Sekirai in the city got a text message about Minato's plan to infiltrate the MBI tower with an offer of immunity to any of them that could stop him. Minato had also received the text and got worried, but the girls promised to keep him safe during the mission. Higa was also discussing the likelihood of Minato's success with Kakizaki, but then he got a guess that turned out to be Seo and his girls. After striking a deal with him over a top-secret job, Kakizaki asked why he didn't just use one of his Sekireis, and he said there was no point risking one of theirs for such a job. That night, the girls all got into the bath to prepare themselves for the mission, and Musubi used the opportunity to remind them of the day she first fought Yuzume right in the same bath. While Tsukiyun was trying to drown them out of excitement, Moyo was talking to Minato about the mission and promised to cook up a feast so they could rest easy after the mission. Meanwhile, Kagari was on the phone with Takami about what Minaka pulled and promised to do her best to help Minato achieve his goal. The next day, Minato took a moment to recall everyone that he had come across recently and used his experiences as motivation to get started on the mission. After meeting up with the girls outside, he asked if it was safe to start the mission in broad daylight, and Matsu said it was actually the best time to do it since Minaka would be forced to limit the use of his power. Just then, they saw MBI choppers filling the sky and informing civilians of an order to stay indoors, so Matsu apologized for underestimating Minaka and Mia wished them luck before they started heading for the MBI building. While Minato was with Tsukiyumi, Kazehana, and Musubi, Kagari and Ku were with Matsu trying to infiltrate the MBI servers by sneaking in through the botanical garden where Mikogami once tried to take Ku and caused her to enter a photosynthesis coma. The moment she found the shed with a secret entrance into the company building, Mikogami showed up to stop them. By then, Natsu was in the tower with the disciplinary squad and got an update on Minato's location, so he wished the girls luck and left. Then Tsubasa kept glazing him, so Kazehana reminded her that he was not actually into girls, but while they were arguing over it, Hirasuba was obsessing over Musubi's increasing strength. At the time, Minato and the girls were getting closer to the tower, but Kazehana stopped them after sensing a lot of bad vibes, and they suddenly got surrounded by every Sekirai in the city. Just then, he got a call from Matsu, and tried to tell her what was happening, but she was also in a bit of a pickle, because Mikogami had shown up with a Kitsu and a new Sekirai named Taki. After the usual trash talk, Taki used her fog skill to affect their field of vision so she could attack, but Ku activated her plant skills to stop her. Matsu then grabbed Ku and made her run for it, but Matsu joined the party to stop her, so she tossed an explosive to distract him. Kagari then tried to stop him, but Taki merged her powers with the Kitsus and froze her until she became a human popsicle. Meanwhile, Tsukiyomi was already about to attack the Sekirai surrounding them, but Minato reminded them that the Sekirais were only being forced into it by Minaka. Just then, Nishi pulled up with his girls and called dibs on stopping Minato, but the other Sekirais didn't like his dollar store Andrew Tate act and started roasting him. He immediately attacked one of the Ashikabis and got his skull cracked open by his Sekirai, which then led to an all-out brawl that Minato used to escape with the girls. When they finally made it into the tower, its lockdown mode got activated, and Minaka got excited to finally see some action firsthand. Moments later, he got hooked up to the building's speaker system to tell Minato that he and the girl had an hour to get to the top if they wanted his help with Chio. Meanwhile, Kagari managed to heat herself up again and closed off Taki and a Kitsu in a ring of fire. They knew it could cause unfixable damage to their plot cannons, so they took off right before Takami called Kagari to warn her about Matsu's plan. By then, Matsu had made it inside with Ku and couldn't get any signal, but then they heard Mikogami following them with Matsu and hid in the vents. While Kagari rushed in to save them from a trap waiting in the control room, Minato and the girls were running up the stairs until they got to a floor with an unusually long landing in between them and the next flight of stairs. They tried to run across it, but then Kazehana sensed a trap and blew them away right before the trap door slammed shut and separated her from the rest of them. Tsubasa then showed up to take her on, so she told Minato to go ahead with the others, but he refused to abandon her. After she reminded him of the promise to Uzume, Tsukiyomi tried breaking the door open with her water skill, but it was useless, so Minato told her to trust that Kazehana would be able to take care of herself, and they continued running towards the stairs. Tsubasa kept struggling to land a punch on Kazehana, but then a couple more trapdoors dropped down, and the restricted air affected her powers, giving Tsubasa the upper hand she desperately needed. Just as Tsukiyomi blocked another set of traps, Kazehana showed up to take her on while Minaka paid close attention to their duels. By then, Matsu and Mikogami could sense someone, and Matsu thought it was her, but it was actually Karasuba, who was itching to see if he had improved in his time away from the disciplinary squad. With Kazehana hot on their tail, Tsukiyomi told Minato to finish the mission with Musubi while she stayed back to fight her. Nishi was still fighting with the other Ashikabis at the time, but his girls called his attention to the botanical garden that was now looking worse than a wildfire at the peak of summer. While Matsu was struggling to keep up with Karasuba's attacks, Kagari was dodging traps to reach Matsu, who was just about to find the control room with Ku. Tsukiyomi, on the other hand, chased Kazehana into a dark room, but it turned out to be a trap that started closing in on her. By then, Minato was trying to get up the stairs with Musubi, but Minaka released a bowling ball to turn them to mush. After she smashed the rock, things started to look bad for the others, but then the traps started to deactivate, and Minaka lost control of his remote device. Matsu had made it to the control room and gave them all the signal to finish the mission, so Kazehana started using her powers again, and Tsukiyomi blew the door off with Kazehana. The next moment, Minaka activated the defense bots set up in the control room to exterminate invaders. Kazehana then reminded Tsubasa of the order to evacuate if the traps were to fail, so she smashed the ground in front of them to kick up a dust cloud and escaped. By then, the defense bots were powering up to fry Matsu, but she came prepared with plant pods that Ku then used to snatch up most of them. Minaka still had access to the live feed and saw their attempt to outsmart him, so he pulled a lever to activate the self-destruct command he installed on the building. Takami tried to stop him, but he ordered his guards to get her out of the building and used the comms to tell Minato and the girls that he had changed the game to a large escape room final. They all frantically ran across the halls to get to safety as the bombs started detonating, and Matsu hacked into the system as fast as she could to stop them from going off. With the defense bots increasing by the minute and the building seconds away from total destruction, destruction. Who struggled to hold them back, and one eventually slipped through, but thankfully, Seo's girls showed up to support them. He then tossed a chip to Matsu and said Higa wanted him to help her hack into the MBI database to get Chiho's treatment information in exchange for everything she could pull on the origins of the Sekirei project. Matsu told him that Higa could be planning something more sinister with the data, but Seo said that was the reason he took the job. Matsu immediately uploaded the software on the chip and managed to gain access to the database, so she sent all the data to Kakizaki's server while finally getting the codes to shut down the defense bots. The next moment, they activated the fail-safe gas protocol, so Seo grabbed Q and bolted with the twins. Ku didn't want to leave her behind, so she jumped off Seo's back to help Matsu, and they tried to stop her, but the crumbling walls separated them. By then, Matsu was struggling to keep the poison out while deactivating the bombs and almost got crushed by the debris, but Ku got there in time and kept her safe until the poison did its thing. After deactivating the bombs, Matsu saw a notification about the third stage of the Sekirei project and passed out. Just then, Minato and Musubi realized that she had succeeded and quickly made it to the top, where Minaka was waiting to congratulate them and showed Minato where the chip containing the rest of Chio's treatment data was. He then told them that the building was minutes away from completely crumbling because its foundation was the first to get blown up. After he ran into the clock tower and escaped with a rocket he had built into the building, Musubi grabbed Minato and ran as fast as they could. However, they ran out of time to find a good exit, so she jumped right out of a window with him. After it all came down, they got out of the rubble, and he remembered the dream he had about a similar tragedy involving the rest of the girls. When he saw that they were all still alive, he and Musubi tried to help them up, but Karasuba showed up and demanded a duel with Musubi. They were all against the idea and told Musubi to leave, but Karasuba threatened to finish Matsu off, so Musubi accepted the challenge. She charged in for the first strike and almost lost her arm to Karasuba's blade, but she kept going and managed to stay in one piece, so Karasuba took off for a surprise attack. At the last moment, Musubi caught her sword, but Karasuba was still too strong and started to force her down. Realizing the danger she was in, Minato ran in and held Musubi down so Karasuba could take her anger out on him instead. Karasuba thought ending him would force Musubi's true strength to unlock, but then her core started to glow, and she remembered her true purpose. After kissing Minato to activate her wings, Musubi powered up for one final attack, and